was researching like.
Just don't bring anything bad into the house. That's all I ask.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's my only rule. If something makes me uncomfortable, I'm gonna let you know. And don't bring anything weird in the house.
Nothing weird's happening.
Spirits and stuff, okay? You bring weird shit home all the time. Like fucking boombox, but.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were about to pour it on
To
there.
keep it ice cold.
And
This
I
is
got
special
scared.
Yeah, sure. All right, so
Are you
I
gonna
guess
start?
yeah, we're
I'm
about to
gonna
start.
scoop.
This camera is the main one. So if there's any camera that you want to look at for any reason, the middle one would be
Unless you wouldn't be creepy. I'm sorry.
I heard that and I'm like, the fuck is he saying?
So if I'm just like.
Hello, welcome to 93 Theory in Practice. I am Mike, and here today we have Kyle Brabham.
How you doing?
So today we're just kind of going to get into a whole bunch of randomness. So whatever basically interests us, but primarily we're going to go into two different things: meditation and breathing. We're going to try the Wim Hof breathing method. Y'all know, I've mentioned it before, I have a little bit of experience in this, but we're going to try a somewhat novice and just show how accessible pranayama-like techniques can be for the everyday person. So we'll just get started and just get everyone comfortable. That's what we like to do here in the Theory and Practice.
Get comfortable.
Yeah. So, Kyle, go ahead. Let's start with, let's get your history. So, basically, where you're born, where you're from, what brought you to Texas. Yeah.
Okay. Born and raised in Tampa, Florida. Florida native. Grew up there, went to college there, and then met the love of my life, who happened to be in Texas. So I ran out here immediately after I graduated from Florida State, and that's where I've been ever since. So, history-wise, I've always been a fan of things like this. So I'm gonna be excited to see what today has to offer.
Sweet, man. So, this love of your life, explain to us, because I've heard this story. Explain to
The
us.
long version. Huh?
Yes. Now, first of all, I want to preface this in this way. A lot of people that may be interested in these kind of things may be nerds. Those nerds may have trouble finding love. Now, remember, guys, miracles happen. Kyle's going to explain how this is true. Now, go ahead and explain to us. No pressure, but
No pressure.
how exactly you met this love of your life.
All right, so we all have our thing that we like to do that we kind of take for granted. Mine at the age was playing a video game, well, a computer game rather, called RuneScape. And this game I took pretty seriously. I didn't really get really into the social aspect of it, which there was. Consider it relatively similar to World of Warcraft, online chat enabled. You can talk to people, you can grow relationships with people, and that's exactly what happened. So I'm just making my way through the game, playing the game, maybe taking it a little too seriously, and I pass a part of a town where people are just hanging out, and I pass my soon-to-be girlfriend at the time. We were just like messing around, young kids. She was 13, I was 15, and we were just like, yeah, let's see what this is about. Like, didn't take it seriously at all. And then time kind of passed, and we stayed in communication with one another, and it got serious. So, of course, we're growing up at the same time. We have a real life to kind of take for granted. So we went our own ways and kind of came back and forth to one another. And time passed, like 10 or so years, and we'd still had a connection. And I kind of pushed it aside for a girl I was dating in real. I did date girls in real life.
Not just video game women.
Not just the video
Yeah.
game women. And so I fully invested my time in that, and then of course that didn't work out. So I scrambled, because I am a relationship type of person, and I kind of scrambled in my head like, well, what do I have to kind of fall back on, which is kind of something that. When you think about it like that, it's not something you want to have to do. You want to just live your life going forward. But I kind of hold on to things. So I was like, who do I have that I could maybe spark something with? And I thought of her immediately and reached out to her. And before you know it, she was driving her way to Texas, or driving her way to Florida for the first time we would ever meet. Because this whole relationship, it stayed long distance and just kind
So
of...
she took the risk to drive
the
from
risk, of
Texas
course.
to Florida.
And that was like, I was like, no, don't do that, because I was just like, terrified, and because you never know what could happen. Y'all have probably seen Catfish, a couple of episodes of that. We would have completely crushed that show. When I saw her for the first time outside of a Red Roof Inn in Tallahassee, Florida, and it took me ages to even work up the courage to go see her. She was with her friend, didn't go by herself, which was smart. And I just saw her, hugged her, and that was that. And I had nothing crazy the first night or anything weird. Like, we took it super slow, and it was all organic and beautiful. And moved out to Texas as a kind of like a, hey, look, I'm really about you sort of thing. And shoot, it's been working ever since. We're coming up on 5 years.
Wow.
So that's going to be pretty real.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So y'all met in a fantasy adventure game.
Fantasy adventure game. Maintain communication through various elements such as like online chat. Like you had your AOL Instant Messenger. I know everyone remembered that. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Turned into a real life love adventure.
It's a real
That's
thing
awesome.
now. Yeah, we get mad at each other in ways that we never thought, and then on the flip side, like make each other happier than we could ever imagine.
That's what a real relationship is.
Yeah.
Experiencing both polarities of what it is to be humans interacting with other
And being
humans.
able to, you can happen anywhere, in any avenue, anywhere. So love can happen anywhere.
Nice. So, Mr. Kyle, seeing where you come from, you're familiar with the fantasy realm, in a sense, at least in the artistic sense. So, today what we're going to get delved into is a little bit into what I like to call human fantasy. So, the constant, persistent psychological fantasy that has always encapsulated man. And that's been spirit, space, everything that is outside of normal human perception, everything that is outside of the everyday experience. So, as we've spoken in our earlier podcasts, there's a lot that has to do with human history that pertains to our search for the unknown, our search for the occult. It is this very thing that has driven us towards finding hidden treasures. So, one of those treasures we're going to speak about today has to do with breathing, what breath is, and how it really helps us to understand our reality. So, Kyle, I remember I spoke to you a little bit about a man named Wim Hof. Now, I speak of this man mainly because of his accessibility. He's a very, I would like to say, approachable person. He's a very qualified individual. He's accomplished many feats of strength, feats of endurance, all in very uncanny situations. He holds the world record for longest under-ice swim without wearing a swimsuit or a dive suit. He is also holds the world record for basically climbing mountains while basically during snowstorms without clothes or shoes. He is more famous for taking normal everyday people and equipping them with the techniques and the ability to do these miraculous things as well. Now, I am not claiming that I can do anything like this, and I'm also not claiming that this gentleman here is going to be able to do that as well. I do understand that to gain the attraction of a lot of people, there is a sense of, propaganda. We've spoken about what it is to perform magical acts in the world, to propagate our wills, throughout other people. Partially, this is done through extravagance. So, of course, as humble as someone like Wim Hof may be, you can understand how his extravagant feats and the things that he accomplishes do give him weight and credibility. So, we're not going to claim any of that credibility at all. We're going to take the moderate approach and just try it as novices. We're all coming to this path together. Remember, all of us are always neophytes. No matter how grand we claim we have become, we're always beginners. We're always growing. So, do you happen to know anything about pranayama? Have you come encounter it? Do you know anything about Indian culture, meditation, anything like that? What's your familiarity?
Very, very surface level. In terms of meditation, just what you see on TV, I've heard something like facts such as like, and I'm not going to throw names, you're going to see how just lacking I am in terms of this this subject. Whenever the one Buddhist monk, whoever his name was, that set himself afire during the protest, whatever, there was evidence in this realm that he was already mentally checked out due to his meditative state that he was in, and just the fact that and just perceiving that, understanding that he was not present in his body and didn't feel the pain of that fire is just something that you have to like step back and understand is like, okay, that's not normal.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, stuff like that, but very surface level.
Yeah.
In terms of
But
my
it
knowledge.
is interesting how such a passive act as physically doing nothing as much as possible, in a sense, can allow one to undergo such active things, such as experience the pain of burning alive. But you also know there are some monks who, through this meditative state, will mummify themselves while alive. So they will start taking like different substances, like different herbal things and chemicals into their body to start preserving themselves slowly. So people will aid them. So basically what it is they've decided to surpass the physical form. So to meditate out of physicality, in a sense. Now, I can't speak exactly for why someone would want to do that, but I would guess it would have to be to essentially enlighten out of physicality. So these monks take a certain oath. They meditate in a small chamber. I'm talking like maybe 4 by 4, with just a window. They sit and do nothing else. They only meditate. About once a day, someone will come in, give them food, maybe more, maybe twice a day, I would assume. You gotta use the bathroom, I guess. But they'll bring them food, water, make sure they're okay, give them like basically the stuff that they need to just slowly die in a very controlled way, so that by the time they pass on, essentially their entire physical body has been preserved. In that Buddhist tradition, the preserved being is actually still alive. Like, they believe that preserved person is basically the soul still resides. So the person is cosmically gone, so their spirit, in a sense, has enlightened and traversed, but the soul and intelligence associated with that spirit, so essentially they're a bodhisattva, so an enlightened being, but with a physical talisman still here on earth, that physical talisman being their preserved body. It's very interesting, and it's all done through a meditative state. Now, a lot of people would probably think that seems like a very odd way of suicide, but you have to remember, these people, they must be pretty sane considering there's no outside influence. It's just your will and action. And these people prove their beliefs. So you have a little bit of an understanding of meditation, but we all do. I think it was, quote me if I'm wrong, don't quote me if I'm wrong, however you say that, Socrates that said, a man is only wise when he realizes how much he does not know. Or was it, the fool thinks he knows everything, the wise man knows he knows nothing. Yeah, something like that. Confucius. Now, so God, have you ever attempted to meditate in the traditional sense?
Not in the traditional sense. I mean, everyone's been in detention and just like try to pass time, but never really with any contemplation in mind or anything like that, which I regret now. Looking back on it with some of the stuff that I've experienced now, which we'll get to, I mean, it's something that I've been interested in from a kind of sideline perspective. So, not really understood how, and yes, I have the internet and I could look up how, but
how about this? Have you ever just gone alone in your room put on music on headphones and just sat and listened to the music?
That I can,
Yeah.
I can definitely say.
Have you ever just been sitting around and just watching the clouds go by, feeling the breeze, laying in the grass,
Taking in like the
taking in the moment?
tertiary kind of
Mm-hmm.
experience.
So, what if I told you that the experience of the moment is exactly the experience you're chasing while trying to meditate?
Then I would say that I've been close, but not really looking in the. That's good.
Yeah.
It means that I've been kind of on the outskirts of where we need to be.
Yeah. So think of it this way: the whole aim of meditation is to quiet one's mind. When most people meditate, beyond just the whole precept of I want to be more mentally clear, energized, and focused, which these are benefits that meditation does offer. Beyond that, it's a subtle quieting of the senses. It is the removal of the external bullshit, essentially, that clouds are experienced. When you sit down, you still your body. We learn from what is slow to become our textbook, Aleister Crowley's Magic in Theory and Practice. We learn his yoga section. The first art of yoga that we are taught to learn is asana. Asana being the physical form or posture that we take. So asana being anything from, say, a yogic position of contorting one's body to just sitting in the lotus position. Legs flat, crossed, with hands in center. Or in comfy dude position. It's your asana. We learn that through the control of body through asana, we learn to forego the noise of the body. Next, we learn of dharana, mental control, the stilling of the mind. We learn to focus either on a certain idea or to try and to eliminate every idea as it comes into thought. Basically, what we're doing is we're slowly stripping away our senses to come to the core, to experience what it is to truly be alive, to experience Zen. So then you come to state, well, what is Zen? What is this Zen state? One thing I've learned when studying Zen is most Zen masters, when you go and join their monastery, is they'll just have you clean. Instead of meditating, reading scrolls, learning kung fu, martial arts, whatever you innately think that Zen is, essentially the first thing they teach you is to do something consciously, to do something in the moment. Essentially what meditation is, it's the stilling of everything you perceive to be yourself to understand who you are in that moment. Now, what I've come to understand is that the meditative state is essentially just the state that allows you to be fully aware of who you are, to be aware of what you are and where you are. It's to take your very existence into conscious awareness. You strip away everything that distracts you from truth, obtain truth, and live in it. It's no different than just finding the core of who you are, finding your true will, your thelema, and moving forward with it. The meditative state is the state of oneness with oneself and one's environment. It is connection. So, when I asked you, Kyle, if you've ever experienced connection with something in the moment, what you are experiencing is true meditation. It's true focus. So in that sense, this should help us, at least if you want to be convinced by what I'm saying. Now, if you want to be convinced that meditation is a spiritual practice that you must undertake to assume higher and higher levels of consciousness, that's perfectly fine. That is a framework of mind that is perfectly okay. But if you want to take the practical way of viewing this, so how does this impact us now? How does this allow us to reach godhood? How does this allow us to reach enlightenment? How does this allow us to be productive and to be inspired here and now? How does meditation allow this to happen for the everyday person? So this is why we're doing this, guys. This is why we're having these interviews with people. This is why I brought Kyle here. So, we're about to move on to our next stage. This is going to be our podcast stage. So, I'm done being Zafanor Adonai, your host. Now I'm just going to be Mike, hanging out with this guy, basically showing that occultism, mysticism, astrology, alternative history, the paranormal, all of this stuff is it's weird, and some of it may be real, but it shouldn't disconnect us from everyone else. So, that's
Yeah, this is amazing.
you like that?
This is amazing.
So that right there is a blend of Bavarian chocolate coffee, almond cream coffee blend. It has cinnamon, chai, pumpkin spice. It's a whole bunch of weird
slew of
things.
things. I don't even drink coffee, and this is I would come back for one.
I like it. Complex and robust, yeah. Subtle in flavor. So, Kyle, I just want to go ahead and we're going to explain to this basically what my podcast is, and this will also explain why I talk to the camera like I do. So, I am what's called a Thelemite. A Thelemite is someone who believes in a kind of a doctrine, but the doctrine involves basically ultimate freedom. Thelema is Greek for will. So basically, I am a believer in will, will power, or will force. So to explain this a little bit more, have you ever heard of a gentleman called Aleister Crowley?
You may mention them, but you should delve into that.
So, Aleister Crowley was a gentleman born quite a while ago. He was actually born in the 1800s. He's a Cambridge scholar, an author, a poet, an artist, a playwright, just an overall cool intellectual guy. So I'll give you a history. So if anyone here doesn't know, I'm going to try and give my best attempt at recalling my memory. Now I've read a couple biographies about Crowley, but you have to remember, when we do these things, sometimes we enter altered states of consciousness. Now, I can speak to you fairly well now, but think of it this way. We have entered a realm of consciousness that skims about the astral, that allows us to elevate above the heavens. Baby, they don't get much higher than this. So, I'm going to do my best to give you an accurate representation of history. This might be a little bit more on the lines of drunk history.
Okay.
So let's move forward. Aleister Crowley was this gentleman that I explained. He was born to a minister father. They were Plymouth Brethren. Plymouth Brethren, you think of as a very, I want to say they're very by the book on the Bible. So literal. They take the Bible very literal. So very close to like you would think like old pilgrims would believe, like that. But in England. So you have to remember he's English. From a young age, he didn't quite fit into that. He knew that there was something more. Well, essentially, what separated him was first his intelligence. From a young age, it was quite evident that he was a very intelligent young man. And secondly, that he wasn't one to really be convinced of things very well. He was a curious young man, probably to his own detriment. His parents, being so devout, they gave him the well, I would say willing epitaph, but nickname of the Beast. His mom, he was such a rambunctious child, she would say, "You are the Beast 666." So yeah, this woman, fully believing in like the Book of Revelations and in Jesus and salvation, being a pastor's wife. Now, of course, he would sometimes allude to, this was a little joking, but at other times when she's frustrated, she sometimes kind of meant it. Like, essentially, he was the Antichrist.
Okay.
Was what she was alluding to. So from a young age, he was, in a sense, in a joking way, convinced that he was the Antichrist, the Beast 666 of Revelations.
Okay.
So basically what that did for him is he kind of liberated himself from Christian belief fairly well. Now, the Bible was the only book he was allowed to read up until like the age of 12 or 13 or something like that, which he knew it frontwards and backwards like his hand, okay? But he was also a very uncontrollable person. He had a voracious sexual curiosity. He had a curiosity just for pain, for anything. He was in a morbid digester of information. I'm painting this picture because he wanted to portray a certain persona. So I'm going to do my best to play into that a little bit. And you'll get where I'm coming from later on. It's going to sound confusing in the beginning,
No.
but you're going to like this. So he goes off to college. He starts learning the world of poetry and music and women and drugs. So he delves into the pleasures of the world, but he starts turning to something a little bit deeper. So while studying at Cambridge, he comes across some text. Basically comes across occult texts. Being part of the English library, there are of course very ancient manuscripts from the 15th century and some even older. So he would study these as part of the catalog of education. He decided to study this a little deeper. So long story short, his parents died, left him a huge fortune because they were very rich. Okay?
Lucky him.
Yeah, lucky him. His Plymouth Brethren parents, who, as Christians, you would hope, believed in being modest, good stewards, left him with what today I would imagine millions of dollars. But he used this, what I would view as the most productive way a young man can. He traveled the world, baby, in style. So, Aleister Crowley travels the world, goes to China, Mexico, all these other places, learns, joins monasteries, joins ashrams, studies Hinduism, studies Buddhism, really gets into Buddhism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism. He studies everything under the sun. He practices it, experiences it, delves down into what it is. He lives the life of a modern day, in a sense, Indiana Jones. Throughout all of this, he becomes an accomplished mountaineer. He holds, maybe not anymore, but at the time, he held world records for climbing mountains.
Wow.
He pioneered the use of certain climbing tools, techniques, and implementation that they use today. This guy's a badass.
Yeah, this guy's
But
all
you've
around.
never heard of him. Interesting, huh? So, just to move forward, this Aleister Crowley lives this very accomplished life. Now, some people will say that this accomplished life was aided by quite a bit of money. So, of course, anyone could live out these grand adventures had they had the funds. But he took something away from that. Now, Aleister Crowley was born with asthma. At the time, what they would give people for asthma was heroin. Just like how Coca-Cola originally had Coke in it, so opioids that come from the poppy plant. So opioids, they work on the pain receptors so they ease pain, but they also, part of a side effect is they are respiratory easers, so like they relax the respiratory system, so allow ease of breathing. And they also slow heart rate, which when most people OD from heroin, it's from their heart stopping or they stop breathing. Aleister Crowley, having asthma, having inflammation in the lungs, doctors at the time would give him the opioid heroin, or what came to be heroin, as the medicine to help his asthma attacks. So from an early age, he was addicted to heroin, but medicatively. Later on, he was prescribed cocaine, so he would do cocaine to aid his health as well. But this was the culture back then. You have to understand, this was Victorian times. All right.
It was normal.
Yeah, so it was like 1860s, 70s to like the 1900s. So heroin, cocaine, these kind of substances were just medicines at the time. Now, that's not to say there weren't people that abused these things. There's always been drug abusers. But they were basically how we prescribe Vicodin now. So I just have to preface that. He was a drug addict. He wrote a book, a very famous book called Diary of a Drug Fiend, of which he poetically and illustratively discussed his life of drugs in very romantic language. But essentially, he delved into the world of just doing all kinds of different drugs. He experienced life as much as he possibly could as a, way of self-discovery, of finding out who he was and what he was. So, in all of this, he comes across some pretty interesting books. One of them he says that was pretty influential on him was, I can't remember the book, but it was like Religion in Practice. The Varieties of Religious Practice. It's an old book that basically talked about, it was one of the first books that were basically talking about all different religions. And he saw correlations between all religions. So different mythos seem to carry over from religion to religion, civilization to civilization. He saw a common thread. He experienced this common thread going to these places and getting involved in these religions. So he would experience Buddhist meditation, Hindu meditation, Tantra, yoga, alchemy, magic, just all kinds of weird stuff. What's really cool about him, though, is this would make one think that he was a quackadoo. But when he actually would come back to either England or the States, he would actually go and raid seances and expose them for what they were. Because not only had he experienced religious practice in its true sense, but baby, when you taste the Kool-Aid, you know what cherry is. So he would go places and see when religions were just bullshit. BSing. He learned essentially what magic is in its truest sense. So I'll explain that here in a second. So Aleister Crowley goes through all these life experiences. He becomes what he likes to call a magician, a sorcerer, an invoker, a mysterio, essentially. He takes on the persona of a mystic. He has, in a sense, a spiritual awakening, an enlightenment, a revelation, if you want to put it. Essentially, he realizes that he becomes the herald, or the bringer forth, or the prophet of this thing called the new Aeon. So, Aleister Crowley goes from little Christian boy, Cambridge scholar, drops out, travels the world like a bohemian hippie, has a spiritual awakening, realizes he's the next prophet of God.
That timeline there.
Yeah, that timeline though. So this guy here is a personal hero of mine. Now, of course, his accomplishments would lead one to be interested in such a person. He lives a life similar to, say, like Teddy Roosevelt, Winston Churchill. In fact, he was a friend of Winston Churchill. In fact, he provided occult knowledge for Queen Elizabeth during the Second World War. In fact, he aided America in its propaganda against the Germans. He provided the occult knowledge of the Germans to the American and English militaries to help them discern their propaganda tactics. This man was a badass.
This sounds like.
So, it leads one to think, what made this man so great? What inspired him? What allowed him to do these things? One can say he was born special or something like that. But aren't we all born special? Right?
My mother says so.
Yeah. His mom was not convinced he was special. In fact, she was convinced he was the Antichrist. In a sense, he was the Antichrist. So, to move forward, have you ever heard of occult societies or secret societies?
I wouldn't be able to name any, but I've definitely heard of them.
They've always been somewhat negative, correct?
Yeah, negative connotation for sure. And just from what I've read, just demons, devil, that it's like the dark side.
Yeah.
666.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Always been interesting though.
Yes. So, Aleister Crowley was a man from an early age who joined an occult society. That occult society was called the Golden Dawn. Golden Dawn is just what it is. It's the dawn of something new, of the sun, the golden sun. The dawn of the new golden sun, essentially. But it's an occult society, started by some very famous people you can think of. I'm not going to name all of them. I'll name a couple, I guess, as we talk. Anyone that's interested, just buy any book by, say, Israel Regardie or Chic Cicero or Lon Milo Duquette or Aleister Crowley and on the Golden Dawn, and you will get a slew of cool people that claimed or have been claimed to have been members. essentially, he joined an occult society to try and acquire hidden knowledge. So he had this idea that we weren't, as a people, as a society, as a species, being told everything. Okay. In a sense, he was what 100, 200 years ago would have been a conspiracy theorist. We have this today. We're not being told everything. There's things about our past, our religion, our universe we don't know. But somehow people have figured it out at some point. We just lost the information. So he, being convinced of this, did everything he possibly could to acquire that knowledge. So he joined the occult society, sought out occult membership. Further on, he would create his own occult organization called the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, or the Order of the Knights Templar. It's an offshoot of the Masons,
Okay.
so the Masonic order, or I should say the German Masonic OTO. There's all kinds of Masons out here. So I'm going to burst your bubble. Occult societies exist. There are dozens of them. I'm a member of well, at least one.
At least.
At least one. They are not clandestine organizations who have been and seek to control humans in general.
I don't think I ran with the notion that
They had any
that
significant
they had
power?
Any,
Yeah.
I mean, well, that and the fact that they're out there.
Have you heard of the Illuminati?
Yeah, which that one's been thrown around a lot in the past
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah, that one's not real.
Yeah, that one is the Hollywood fabrication of the idea. I feel like.
Exactly. So, part of my podcast and what I do is I talk about like these really obscure things. So I talk about things like occult societies, magic, mysticism, meditation, yoga, tantra, spirits, astrology, space, quantum physics, things like that. But what I try and do is relate that information in a way that, one, demystifies it in a certain sense, makes it intelligible for normal, intelligent people, and also helps to show what's been hidden. So, my personal belief is we are part of a new dawn, a new generation. We've entered in a new era of change. So, like how Christ brought about the Christian era of our modern history. So basically, you could literally say about 2,000 years ago, things changed catastrophically, roughly, for everyone, for everyone around the world. There was a shift, a paradigm shift in the thinking and living of mankind, for good or for better. But essentially, about every couple thousand years or so, mankind evolves or changes in certain ways. And these are progressive changes now, called these epochs. Historians do the same thing when they list the classical era, the Renaissance era. They represent entire clusters of periods of human consciousness, or essentially what people were into at that time, baby. That, in that same way, in my personal spiritual belief and intellectual belief, and some others, that every 2,000 to 2,600 years, that somewhat correlates to astrological changes, humanity enters new phases of consciousness. I believe that about 100 years ago, around 1904, we entered a new phase of consciousness. Now, Christians would believe this to be the beginning of the end times, in a sense when Jerusalem became its own nation again. So when the nation of Israel became a thing, I think that was 1914, I believe. But that was what they kicked off as, wow, now the temple can be raided by the Antichrist, so the end times can happen. Woo! So in the way that they adopted that, myself and other people adopted that when Aleister Crowley in 1904 had a series of rituals with his Scarlet Woman called Rose Kelly and received some spiritual visions through automatic writing of a new prophecy for the new era, thus issuing the new Aeon, or the Aeon of Horus. The old one being that of Osiris. So, well, we can talk about that a little bit more, but what's important is essentially, as human beings, we're entering a new era. We're evolving in a specific way. Now, this makes sense when you think of the last 100 years of human existence. We've gone from peoples who essentially didn't have automobiles. We relied on animals and the environment to provide everything we needed. We weren't necessarily industrialization. So mechanization of the human species has only happened within the last 200 years or so. Beyond that, humans lived and thought completely different. This evolution of mankind through technology has sparked something different in us. So now we are moving towards something. Our evolutionary trajectory has altered.
Yeah.
That's essentially all a change of an aeon is, in a sense. It's when humanity alters its own destiny in a certain way, or something catastrophic causes man to move a certain way. That's the change or the perception of the aeon. So in my personal belief, around that time, 100 years ago, we entered a new era. That mankind has a new, if you want to say, lease on life, spiritually, cosmically, intellectually, societally. Okay? In every aspect, we are like children, anew. We can create the next world, in a sense. This is generally wrapped up in very spiritual language, but it's always to explain very mundane things, or to make very mundane things just seem a little popular. So we go back to Aleister Crowley. He understood the connection between what it was to have a spiritual experience, to experience the unknown aspects of life, and then also what it is to be human, to experience the downfalls of life. So Aleister Crowley was a drug addict. He was depressed. He was a sociable person, but his personality was somewhat abrasive, so he didn't make lasting friends very well. He lost lovers often, being bisexual. You could see how 100 years ago it would be very difficult to be yourself, to be free. Freedom, true liberation of self, true enlightenment, to not be chained down by anyone else's precepts, to mold who he was for who he truly was, from past life to past life, to who God created him to be, to what evolution had molded him to be. He wanted that, and then he wanted that for everyone else. Ultimate freedom. The process of acquiring that freedom is called magic. Or is what he called magic, in the occult sense, of the secret side of the sense.
We have such a skewed perception of
It
the
is.
term.
It is. Because when you think of magic, you probably think of a dude
Rabbit's
pulling
hat.
rabbits out of a hat. So here's the cool thing. 100 years ago, that guy wouldn't have been called a magician. He would be called an illusionist or a conjurer. The implication of magic to that is a pop implication within the last, 70 years. Because it's cool. It makes it fit. Because the stage magician would say that he gained his knowledge from going to distant lands and acquiring occult knowledge, bringing it back and having special powers, thus performing these special feats on stage for individuals. It's very similar to what Aleister Crowley did, except instead of going and learning the bullshit, he acquired the core, the technique. Instead of going to the peddlers in the streets of India who did tricks for money, he went to the ashrams, to the man who had been meditating for 50 years, and asked him, what's the meaning of life? Or, is a titty but a titty, if a titty is not? He wanted what's real. He had money. He didn't need to fool anyone. He needed to convince people that everything they needed was within themselves. So unlike the stage magician, the conjurer, the illusionist, who would come back with tricks, he would come back with true spiritual knowledge, with true enlightenment, with science. He swapped. He decided to take a scientific approach to spirituality and a spiritual approach to the everyday. He wanted to make everyday things magical, vibrant, creative, unique. And he wanted to take the lofty spiritual ideals which turned people away, which made it difficult for people to evolve. And he wanted to lay them out in a way that people could understand. He logically took the commonalities in every religion, in every form of enlightenment and mysticism, and he put it down to a scientific system. And he said, if you want enlightenment, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. Here's option A, here's option B, here's option C.
More people should have heard of them.
More people should have. Here's the problem with Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley is a human being. You could kind of think if the devil and Jesus inhabited the same person, or if the Buddha and Jim Morrison were in the same person. You get what I'm saying, man? When he would write, he was an angel. He was God, a prophet, whatever he wanted to be, he was. As a man, he was vile. He was obnoxious. He was irritating. He was pretentious. He was arrogant. I would hate him. His personality would have turned me away from any of his writings. He loved people thinking he was evil. So when he would tell people, I'm a magician, a mystic, I conjure spirits, I communicate with the dead, I perform forbidden magical acts with women of the night, I summon the devil and converse in pacts, I delve deep into the astral realms and acquire treasures and knowledge unseen, I become an astral being and affect matter through vapor, through ether. He would tell people this, knowing in a sense he's bullshitting, in a way, and love when they would look at him frightened and be, you Satanist, you devil worshiper, you charlatan, you hoaxer, you. But it was attention, and he loved it. It was, what do they say? Publicity. It was publicity. Any publicity is good publicity. So he loved people thinking that he was the Antichrist, the Beast 666. He loved people thinking these things about him. And he would give into it. He had this, his ego was tied into being this, having this persona. Such a persona that the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, was a devotee of Crowley. Learned black magic, got into it. List. Anyone else? Alan Parsons. Okay.
Wow.
The man who fronted our modern rocket system, who created essentially our modern rocket program, is a contemporary of Crowley. L. Ron Hubbard, the inventor of Scientology, was best friends and a contemporary and worked with Alan Parsons, who had correspondence with Crowley. So Parsons went on to create a rocket. L. Ron Hubbard went off and became crazy and started his own cult. But it all started from this source of knowledge. Should I think of anyone else that you may
You
be
wrapped
familiar-
up Scientology videos.
Yeah. Scientology had its beginning in the stuff that I believe.
Okay.
Here's another funny tidbit. Nobody's going to believe this unless you get into Gnosticism. The Jehovah's Witness, with their Watchtower theology, is from the Enochian magic system of John Dee. One of the first spies for Queen Elizabeth. He's the original 007. So the monogram 007 is John Dee, the astrologer, magician, mystic, scientist. John Dee created the modern naval equipment that we use to traverse the seas. He created that. Bet you've never heard of John Dee, though. You haven't. Because he's a magician. He was a mystic, an occultist. So history buries him. Aleister Crowley, magician, occultist. History buries him. These men have done more for humanity than any pop star, politician, king, or countryman. Well, no, not countryman. I take that back. Okay. America's awesome. But these men have accomplished great things, but nobody has heard of them. Which is okay. But the Watchtower system is from that. 4 archangels, 4 directions. Okay, either way. A lot of modern cults, whatever. But there's a lot of people in history, a lot of really cool people, and a lot of normal people who have been involved in this sort of thing for a long time. And it's been secret for for some reasons. But to the new Aeon thing, I believe in this new Aeon, there shouldn't be anything hidden. This occult knowledge, if this is how, in a sense, if this is the accumulative knowledge of mankind, studied, extrapolated, dissected, and put into a practical form. So if this is what all these occult societies have been doing for thousands of years, collecting the knowledge of humanity, keeping the humanity on a persistent track, okay? Being the guardians of our evolution, blah, 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 whatever we've been led to believe of clandestine organizations, okay? Essentially, that is somewhat true. There has been a certain strain of information that's been passed on generation to generation from culture to culture, religion to religion. It's the knowledge of us, it's the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of nature, put into symbolic form. If we've been given all of this, if I hold in my hands what I believe in this book, essentially, is enough knowledge to allow anyone to become enlightened, to find out who they are truly and fulfill that destiny. In a sense, to become their conception of God, or whatever they want to be, will to be, I should say. If I believe this, should I hide this? Should this be hidden? Should I require someone to jump through tons of hoops just to get bits and pieces of this information? If their very souls, destinies, and evolution depend on it, should I withhold information? It's the whole Christian doctrine, man. If you have something that's going to save someone, should you keep it away from them? Wouldn't you be doing them harm, not bringing these things to the light? Now I'm starting to sound like a preacher. But essentially, being a Thelemite, someone who believes in Thelema, in will, I believe in taking and not viewing anything as sacred. Delving as deep as you were willing to go into the human experience, into the human psyche, into human history, into anything, to find out the real meat and potatoes of what we're here for, why we have humanity. So let me ask you, why do you think us people, evolved chimpanzees, or created children of God, whichever you want to put it, why do you think we're here? What is the purpose of us being conscious of our own existence?
Man, your answer is going to be so much better than mine. Why are we here?
How about this? Why, not to put you on the spot, because I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I know I'm berating you with a lot of information.
No, let's hear it.
So, you yourself, as Kyle, why do you think you're here?
Something that you ask yourself. Well, I ask myself. Because I, at least, am curious about these questions, but my purpose, maybe to find our purpose, but we spend our whole lives trying to do that, but what is that purpose going to actually bring us? Like, when people aspire to be this or that, like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
In the broader sense, and how can we extrapolate that and actually use that as like a vessel of understanding for why we are here? I don't know. I think that's I don't, without sounding like selfish, like I have no idea why I'm here. Why what is my purpose? I'm not a carbon copy of like all the stuff you see all over the place. I'm definitely in a train of thought above that, I think, where I'm seeing things happening where other people are just falling in line. But so I feel like, I don't know, maybe my purpose is to be one of those people that can differentiate between like the ebb and flow of what social norms kind of push us into.
Sure.
So maybe that's my purpose. Me being here and opening my eyes to this whole thing. Maybe I just now like I cannot answer that question.
If it makes you feel any better, I have no idea either.
Okay, good.
But, so, what propelled me in this direction is like kind of early on in my life as a kid. I kind of decided that like, I had this weird thought that, like, why am I here? I guess as a child, I had an existential crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Of
That's
like,
cool though. That young of an age.
I guess.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Depending on what you're about to tell me.
Yeah. But I really wanted to know why I was here, why I existed, what my purpose was. Not that like I was displeased with what I was experiencing. I mean, I was a really happy child. I remember being a really happy child. But just still wondering like what's going on? What's all this stuff? And then of course people tell you like about God. I grew up with fairly religious like grandparents. Some of my family was. Immediate family not so much.
Church every Sunday and Wednesday for me.
Yeah, so you can relate. I had that like on the summers, and then like when we go visit family, we go to church. It was sort of Catholic kind of thing, and then my other side was just normal Church of Christ, fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah,
Excuse me. So, but as a child, I really wanted to know. So I had a little bit of like an existential crisis where I was like, I made up my mind, and I was like, whatever it's going to take to find that answer out, I'm going to do. So like whatever it would take to get that answer. So, like,
And what age were you at?
I don't know, it was like 9.
Wow.
I really wanted to know why I was here, why people suffered.
I had that. I can relate to that.
Why people suffered, why I suffered, like why I felt pain.
Yeah.
Like what's...
That's relative. Now that you're saying that, I definitely remember delving into why life was so short.
Yeah.
Like and just like generally, like what was the purpose?
And I think like everyone experiences that as a kid. I think it's like when we first experienced, maybe at that time that's the first time I like lost someone, like someone died.
It's death. And I was about to say that death was a profoundly, it floored me for like, I remember nights that I can remember like crying about shit that hadn't even happened yet. Like just like crying about the idea of death in various forms, like my parents dying or like my brother dying, and like grasping that and just being terrified and not liking any bit of it. And
yeah. So that's probably perhaps what I experienced. But being a child, not comprehending that death. I guess as kids, we can't comprehend death because we're full of life. I mean, it's the polar opposite of what we are designed to be. But I lost my train of thought there. Choo choo. Where's that train? I guess I'll touch back on. We'll get into the meditation here in a little bit. Oh, finding the purpose. So at an early age, I decided to do anything I possibly could to try and find that within reason.
right,
Of course.
I'm curious. You know?
So, in my earlier podcasts, I kind of explained kind of some of my experiences in the past, my mindsets, where I've been, what I've done, like some of my beliefs, things like that. But the main thing that's been the constant staple in my life has been spiritual pursuits of like getting into like things and delving in and trying to find out and extrapolate the truth about it. As you know, I used to be a pastor, youth pastor. Used to be pretty. Like, before that, I was a few years before becoming a pastor. I was actually on the road to seminary to become a priest, a monk. I actually did take a vow and became a monk.
Wow.
For a short period of time, was homeless doing evangelical ministry. I can honestly say that was the most depressing time in my life.
Really?
Yeah, because you learn. You learn weird things. But I've led a weird life. I've walked miles with a wooden cross on my back to prove to other people that they should turn to Jesus and get saved. I've stood on street corners and screamed at people. I've barged into other people's churches to try and convince their pastors that they were wrong. I've gone into people's homes and cleansed them and their homes of demons and spirits. I've held seances. I've performed rituals. I've performed baptisms. I've been, if you want to put it in a weird modern term, I've been almost like a shaman my whole life in a
very parallel to this man that you've kind of highlighted for me, though, like spanning different.
Yeah, but mine's been much more sheltered.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's not taking anything away from him. Alistair.
But what I've always found most intriguing is, so like my whole life I've been into this kind of stuff, and none of it's really, like, it's mystified me, but it's never really frightened. It's always like made me more curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see that a little bit in you. Like you're an intelligent guy, and you're not someone that's normally thrown off by things. Like you really put together well, I guess is a good way to say it. So it's always interesting to me how other people, like other very well put together people, not crazy, weird people like me, in a sense. not people that maybe shouldn't have delved into all the sacred knowledge that they should have. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
But that search for understanding your purpose and the reason for being here, that's something that's persistent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that some people think about more than others. Like, I can already tell my girlfriend is not really more about the day-to-day and her life rather than like why she's living, and I'm more about the why than, so I completely understand.
Here's the funny thing. Do you ever, so this is a common experience I have, do you ever find yourself, because we always want to know the why of things, so like what's behind something, what's the groove of the thing, in a sense. But do you ever find yourself getting lost in that? Like,
The train of thought.
not, I'm going to retract that statement because I can't articulate in the way I feel like I can express right now. Let's do this. We're feeling pretty good. We're getting loopy. We're getting on. I'm getting wordy. I don't like getting wordy because that means I'm getting mouthy. I don't like getting mouthy.
Don't get nothing.
Don't get mouthy. Let's move on to the meditation practice. So, Wim Hof breathing. So, basically we just want to get comfortable. Okay? Just as loosey-goosey as you can possibly be. I'm going to get into my normal asana.
You get it relaxed?
Train myself to be this way sometimes.
That's your relaxed?
Yeah, just sit like this. Plus I get cold feet. So, what's important is, we've gone over this a little bit, but we'll just explain it just for the podcast. So Wim Hof breathing involves, in a sense, hyper-oxygenating the body. So implanting as much oxygen as we can. Now, of course, the first thing you want to practice when it comes to meditation is just breath control. Being able to just control your own breathing. Seems simple. I feel like a lot of people put a lot of stress on like different breathing techniques. So like when you get into like meditation and yoga, they teach you like, you must hold your breath, take one breath in, 10 seconds, hold 20 seconds, think about your Mahatatra chakra, let breath out, take 30 seconds, no air, like it's really complicated. And then they throw in this thing with like, only breathe in with your Ida, that is this nostril, and your Pingala, this nostril. It gets all really complicated. So it leads one to believe that you must do complicated things to achieve these higher
And you're
states.
about will, so.
I'm about will, I'm about truth, and I'm about what works. I'm about what's being practical. Because here's the thing. As much as I get into this weird stuff, I start to understand when I start becoming like a wackadoo, when like I no longer relate to people because I'm like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And I start thinking like, wait, come back down, Mike.
Yeah, you're just using perspective.
Yeah, just perspective. So I like to keep things in perspective, which means if it doesn't do anything, stop doing it. Or at least come back to it later.
Yeah, you have a logical sense of it.
It's Aleister Crowley came up with a series of books called Equinox. So it's like little
sounds
art.
familiar.
Yeah, it's like articles on different occult stuff. It was really popular back in the day. It's kind of like a magazine that would come out. You'd order it, and it was like your secret little occult book, and you get to learn what's what in the occult world. Back before they had those kind of things. But he would say it's the little motto was called scientific illuminism. It was the method of science, the aim of religion. So we're going to use the scientific method to extrapolate truth from religion and spirituality. So that's what we're doing. We're taking these weird practices like meditation and yoga. And a lot of people are doing this because, I mean, yoga's in right now. Meditation's in. It's hip.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of light. So we're gonna kind of coattail on that light a little bit. So you don't have to do very complicated things when you breathe. So the important thing is that you first can control your breath. So most people will tell you to do what's called fourfold breathing. So it's like breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. You're just doing that repeatedly, creating a square breath or box breathing. Psychologists, counselors will tell you that this is good for centering yourself, finding balance. It is. I mean, just physiologically, what it does to you is it centers you. You're controlling your breathing. What I've come to learn is that when you impose will on your breath, consciousness on your breath, you become aware of it, I believe what it's doing is making you come into center with yourself. So essentially what the breathing technique is trying to do is, one, moderate your physical body, so make you calm, placid, relaxed, receptive, but to also allow you to get one step closer to self-awareness. So being aware of your breath is one thing.
So yeah, being aware of a like an autonomous physiological process.
So you can do it one of two ways. Having physical control and will of the breath is what we're going to be practicing.
Okay.
Now there's a passive form. So here's the cool thing. A lot of people, these gurus, will tell you, you must do it this way to achieve perfect enlightenment. Or weird mystics will tell you, you must do the ritual this exact way on this sun, when the sun is in this star,
on
and the
zenith
moon,
of,
on the zenith of this. If not, it won't work. That's bullshit. Essentially, what works, works. So if willing yourself to breathe doesn't bring self-awareness, there's the flip side. Passive breath. Just watching the breath as you naturally breathe. Your body's going to naturally do what it does anyways. You're not going to die. No matter what you may think from like a panic attack or whatever. Unless someone's like physically strangling you, you won't die. So you just watch the breath. So what we're going to do is active meditation. So we're going to actively control our breath to try and actively create some form of response or result. We want to test results. So we're being scientists here, but we're the experiment. Yeah, we're the subject, which does make it hard to be objective. So to be a scientist, you have to be objective, but we're the subject.
That's why we have 3 different cameras.
Well, yeah, that's why we have 3 cameras. But also, what's going to be part of the results here is we've been talking here. So there's a lot going on in our brains. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot chemically going on in our body. There's a lot mentally going on, energetically.
Synapses firing.
Synapses firing. We're going to try and calm.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So, in Wim Hof breathing, we're hyperoxygenating. What's important is the in-breath. So what's important is that you fill either the lungs, so you can move my belly out of the way.
My man.
So you can breathe from the lungs if that's comfortable. Some people say that's bad because it invokes panic breathing. Because like, but we'll be okay. You know, you gotta remember, you get these people that give you all these warnings against like, oh, if you do this yoga too much, you can pull something or hurt something, or if you do this pranayama, or if you get into this. There's a lot of haters out there that like to throw shade on stuff, if I want to talk like the lingo of kids nowadays. But you have to understand, find out for yourself, dude. It's yoga, it's meditation. If you get hurt from it,
That's tough.
Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough. So
focusing on the in technique, you said?
In breath. So let's practice a good, strong breathing in. To where you can't hold any more. Yeah. Now you can let that out. But feel what that feels like to be completely full of air. Let the relaxed diaphragm out. What I have to do is imagine like your entire body is like a big bagpipe. So like your whole body you can breathe in. So just already you should notice things are a little quieter, a little stiller. We're putting oxygen in. We're breathing. We're bringing attention to ourselves. Now, the next phase, when we're breathing out, your natural inclination is when you do this, is to do this.
The whole thing, yeah.
You know, your natural. So this is where the will comes in, when imposing will. So our natural innate reaction is to let go all the air, but we're going to impose a little bit of will and tell our bodies to not. We're going to allow our bodies to relax. So the biggest thing is relax. You don't want to be stressed when you're doing this. You don't want to be tight or tense. You want to try and do this as relaxed as you can. So you don't want to, like, when you're breathing in, ideally you don't want to be like, although that will start coming as it gets harder, which is okay. Don't second guess yourself. Allow, just do natural. What's natural. But you want to be as relaxed when you do it. So as just like that. Now stop. Now breathe normal. So that pattern is essentially what we want. As easy, as fluid as you can make it. Don't force it. Don't strain yourself. If you feel yourself straining, try and relax, but don't give it too much thought. Remember, we want to be, this is a passive practice as much as it is in voluntary practice. So we're going to do it. I'm going to do the breathing with you, but I'm going to mainly be focusing on the counts.
Okay.
So I'll be counting, you just do. Once we reach around 25 to 30 breaths, so cycles of doing, we will have one final, and then let go, and then you just let it all out.
And then that's the no breath.
No breath. And we're just going to be
Just
still.
just talking through it.
Yep. So let's go ahead and get started. Just let's get going. Five more good ones. In, out, all the way. Hold. Away. Now breathe back all the way. Hold. Now hold that breath. We're only going to do this for about 15 seconds total. I'll let go. Now second round, we're going to do it, come on. Just relax. Don't fight the body. Take a big breath in. Let out. Just holding on. In. Now hold. Now I want you to tense all the muscles in your neck and head. Try and bring up all the tension into your head. Focus all the blood. Try and consciously bring up your awareness to your head. Now relax. Now just breathe normal. Slowly come back to awareness. All right. So just tell me, how do you feel? Some tingling in the hands?
Tingling in the hands for sure. I'll be honest in saying that when you said to take the last breath in, I honestly thought I had a full breath in. So yeah, I felt like I could have just sat there for another minute or so. That it's profound. I started smiling in the first round because we were on the out breath. And I was just like, I shouldn't be able to hold this long. So I couldn't, I slipped out of my meditative, because I was relaxing with it. I got pulled back to reality, trying to tell me that this shouldn't happen. And I was like, stop. So I just like refocused, but that was amazing.
Why I like this technique so much, as hokey as it may be, it's like, I have a man crush on like this weird dude that like does like weird stuff with breathing and does like these. Well, I guess you could say that like I like have these certain type of hero, I guess. But the reason I like this one so much is it shows you how much of just your natural physiology is just perception. So like the fact you are constantly breathing. So every day you're not aware of your breath. You're just breathing. Your body does it naturally, which leads you to believe, since when I'm naturally holding my breath, when I just stop breathing, I can only do so for 45 seconds, a minute, tops. And then I feel like I'm about to die.
Right.
So your natural physiology tells you that. What this revealed to us is that's not true. Mm-hmm. It's controlled by oxygen. You control the levels of oxygen in your body. You can control some aspects of your physiology just by becoming consciously aware of them and imposing some sort of will on them, or at least becoming passive to them, in a sense. So what we did is we changed the, if you want to put it, the polarity of our bodies. So one of like the key Hermetic principles, so Hermeticism comes from a guy called Hermes Trismegistus. Yeah. So Hermetic sciences are like what I study here, like tarot is called Hermetic science. Magic is Hermetic science. Mysticism, yoga is Hermetic. It just talks about that cool stuff. But it teaches you that everything is polar, positive and negative. In our bodies, some scientists or some physicians will tell you that our bodies are polar. We can be alkaline or acidic. In an acidic state, we have disease or inflammation. In an alkaline state, we are calm, control, able to grow, produce. What we just did is by hyperoxygenating our bodies, we became alkaline. So we reduced inflammation in our bodies, helped center ourselves, oxygenated our bodies. So that tingling you were feeling in your hands is what in mystical practices would have been called feeling prana. So pranayama is essentially like control of breath. So prana means like breath, but it also means life and spirit. Just like the word in Hebrew for like shin, fire, wind, and spirit are all the same. Shin. In a lot of cultures, wind, spirit, and breath are the same thing. When the Bible story, when God created Adam and Eve, he blew into Adam's nostrils and gave him the spirit of life. The word ruach, spirit, in Hebrew is wind. It's the force of air. So not shin, but shin also means spirit. So there's a lot of words mean different things in a lot of religious cultures. What we did is we experienced prana. We breathed deeply without releasing a lot of breath. So we were continuously injecting ourselves with what's called prana. Prana is the life force that inhabits the element of air. So the oxygen you breathe, so if you want to view it scientifically, prana is oxygen. What we felt was the prana in our bodies. Now maybe people who are going to watch this and are going to be mad at me because I'm making a gross simplification of this. But like I said, it's time that we attack these things logically and like on a human level.
Well, yeah, we're
So I'm gonna try and relate these things as most relatable as possible. Because if I just told you we're gonna inject prana into our bodies, we're gonna feel the universal life force about us, we're gonna intersect with it, we're gonna gain some control with willpower, and that prana energy is gonna release some truth facts on us. Like you wouldn't be able to connect
So
with that.
I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. So we're bridging the gap here. So what you felt was oxygen from your, so right here in your hands, there's a vein that makes a little loop in your hand. Part of us being electromagnetic beings, so it's not necessarily the iron in our bloods that creates a magnetic field about us, but just being alive creates a magnetic field. That magnetic field is also in our hands because there's a little loop of blood that goes here, so magnetism is found in the hands. So you see, like, there's polarity in biology, meaning alkaline and acidity, and there's polarity energetically as far as magnetism as positive and negative polarity, and energetically. All these things are correlated in the human body. What we experienced is a physical correlation between those forces, between the subtle etheric forces and the physical forces that we're commonly know as air. So by breathing in air without releasing a lot, we hyperoxygenated our body, or we injected a lot of pure source, oxygen source. That looping around your hands, as it released through the capillaries in your blood vessels in your skin, the oxygen would come out of your hands. What you were feeling is the escape of, I would say, either ozone or oxygen from your blood and your vessels in your body.
Any particular reason it was there? Is it because of that?
That looping your hand.
Is that an important
Yes.
place in?
Yes, it's very important in your hands. Being able to, that is the energy of which you learn when doing magic, that energy that you're creating there, that tangible, it becomes the tangible link of which you transfer power. So that tingly feeling is like when an evangelist faith touches you, and that pulse that he feels in his body from being inspired, that then transfers to you as that shake that causes people to, whoa, go out in the spirit. That psychological, energetic force, you can feel. That's what that is, okay? In a sense. They're all connected. So what this did is helped us to understand that through breathing, we brought about a certain phenomenon that felt not normal, tingling, etheric, outside. What's really cool is if we kept going 3 rounds, 4 rounds, you would begin to feel that force around your head and above you and around your whole body. And the more you become consciously aware of that force, you will be able to control it and manipulate it to different parts of your body. You can send that oxygen and you could send that oxygen to different parts of your body in a sense. And focus attention to it. Bring awareness to certain parts of your body, which mimics meditative practices of the East, of bringing awareness to certain chakras or energy centers in your body. Doing this breathing, hyper-oxygenating the body, focusing on a certain chakra, here, or anywhere. There's thousands of chakras in the body. Bringing conscious awareness to that, so taking that feeling that we just created, that tingliness, and then consciously bringing it to a certain part and becoming innately aware of ourselves through that part of the body. So we did the first step in very deep contemplative meditation. Just sitting here.
I wanna utilize this technique in various aspects of my life. I should have. It's crazy.
It's cool. So if you keep doing it, what I've found is, aside from just that weird feeling of like oxygen and pulse and tingling, you could say on the surface level, if there's anything to be believed about this practice, is you will manifest tingling in your body. So if you want to feel tingly, it will do it without hurting you. And what's wrong with oxygen, bro?
Yeah, like it seems like from a scientific standpoint perfectly healthy.
See? Yeah. So there's a lot of other implications to what we just did. So like I went into some you could bring conscious attention and focus oxygen and bring alkalinity to the body. This is all stuff that somewhat Wim Hof would say or otherwise. But basically what we're seeing here is meditation is not hard, or at least the precursors to meditation. So I should say that breathing practices, stilling the body, stilling the mind, all this stuff is the precursors of meditation. Meditation, you can kind of think, is not necessarily something you're trying to acquire. It's something that you're trying to unveil. There's a lot of layers of yourself that you must peel away before you're meditating. It's different to everyone else. But doing that breathing practice, you were very focused. The only thing that you could literally think about, physically do, was what you were physically doing, or things pertaining to that. It was a level of focus and attention. The more you develop that focus and intention, the deeper you can go into other things. So essentially, what mysticism is, so like what we just showed you, or what I just showed you, is like essentially would have been one of the first steps of like a monk joining like an ashram. So he'd have been taught to still the body. So let's wipe away preconceived notions. So we start at the base level. So in mystery traditions, in like some of the traditions that I may or may not be involved in, you always start off at a very low earthly level. And it involves understanding yourself. Above the grand temples of old was known, student, know thyself, or aspirant, know thyself. Above the temples, on all these like old Masonic temples and these little pictograph paintings they would make, there was this saying that was always on the top. So before you even got into the mystery traditions, before you even got initiated, the first step was knowing yourself. Anytime you join like the Buddhist tradition or any kind of meditative tradition, enlightenment tradition, the first thing you want is to strip away the layers of. Through meditation, we strip away those layers of what we perceive to be ourselves. So we perceive that if we stop breathing for a minute, we'll die. But we just learned that that's not true. You can consciously control that. So what else can you consciously control? What else about yourself that is automatic? Is only automatic because you've never put conscious control of it.
Like, I'm immediately like heartbeat blinking.
Exactly.
Swallowing. Yeah.
Occult practices. So here's another occult practice. It's called Black Mirror Evocation. It's, you ever played Bloody Mary?
Yeah.
Turn the lights off, look in the mirror, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. And if you did it right, something would pop out of the mirror and you'd freak all your friends out. Okay. Or you just trick yourself. Or someone.
You get scared.
You get scared. You get that tangible feeling, like the hair in your neck rises up. What you're doing is called evocation. You're summoning a spirit through a mirror. in the supernatural sense. Whatever. But think of it this way. If you do look into a reflective surface long enough, with the lights dim, chant, breathe, whatever. But if you stare without blinking at anything, you will produce some weird sort of phenomenon. Have you ever stared at a wall, like a painted wall, like these walls, with the cottage cheese shit all over the wall, and then just been so bored staring at it, but then start seeing faces in the wall? Or do you ever look at the clouds and start seeing figures in the clouds?
That would be a prime example.
Well, some people go so far as like when they look at like textures in walls, or your brain. Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is your brain has a natural symbolic associative effect. So like it needs to comprehend its environment. The brain's a transceiver. It has to make sense of the frequency or the transmission it's receiving. So it has to give you a reality. What you perceive has to be a reality that you can comprehend and deal with. You've evolved to do this because as a being that has to survive in an environment, you need to be able to perceive your environment in a logical way, or in a way that you can make a difference in, that you can survive in. So your brain is evolved to take, even if something your brain can't correlate it, an experience, it will try and correlate it. So like think of something like when like a bad event happens, like a car crash, you know there's the way something should have happened, like it actually did happen, but then you get the stories from all the people, and they give you all these different stories. There's a kernel of truth, but everyone's like, nah, man, the black car stopped first, and then the other guy, he hit him, but then you go to another person, that person's like, no. The white car swerved and did that, and you go to another person, the other person's like, George Bush and Dick Cheney. You're like, whoa, wrong guy to talk to. But there's such a huge dichotomy of experience for just single things. So your reality is almost always, if we were to put it down to like, let's talk about what happened, it would be different. The perceptions would be different. Okay? Our brains naturally do this. So, a magical practice is to look into a black mirror, summon a spirit to the mirror, and communicate with it. Black mirror evocation. Okay? This is what's also called Solomonic magic. It's an aspect of witchcraft. It's also an aspect of some old shamanistic religions. View into a big vessel of water. Gaze into a polished sheet of rock. All these types of practices have been around for a very long time. There's like a 5,000-year-old black mirror they found in like Arabia.
I mean, what is the black part of it?
It's just dark. You're just looking at a reflective surface in the dark, essentially.
That's the dark part.
Yeah. Your brain will play tricks on you.
So they just found a mirror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But essentially, I didn't even know it was 5,000 years. It's a really old black mirror made of obsidian stone that obviously someone used for religious purposes.
Obsidian.
Yeah, obsidian. But you will trip yourself out, just like with Bloody Mary. If you stare at something long enough without blinking, you'll produce some sort of phenomenon. So what is this really in its core? Really what it is in its core is by not blinking, giving control over your sight, conscious control over your sight, by not allowing the automatic system to generate your experience, but consciously generating your experience through a reflective surface, through controlled will of gaze, word, and thought. You will produce psychological effects. What that proves to us, at least that practice proves, is that by conscious control of the eyes, you can produce willed images. Thus, people see what they want to see. Thus, individual perceptions are based on the person, not the event that's actually happening. Thus, all reality is mutable based on perception. It's practices of self-discovery. You spend days breathing like this on a mountaintop. Or breathing as long as possible. You spend years learning to take a single breath in and out, to not breathe. You take years to learn to suck energy from the sun. You do these weird practices. You stare into a mirror until you could produce hallucinations. You chant words until you hear the voice of God. You pray until an angel or Jesus appears.
The breath over the hour one.
Yeah.
I'm immediately like, that's crazy.
But you have to think, why do people do this crazy stuff? And why does it produce these effects in people? Because it slowly reveals that us as human beings are something that is so much greater than what we think. We've allowed ourselves to believe what the automatic systems of our conditioning allow us to believe. But in reality, we are something far greater. we are, as individuals, completely mutable and able to do what we personally perceive as great, as to reveal God and truth in our own light. Everyone has that ability. Everyone has that right. So the new aeon, this aeon of Horus, the aeon of the child, we believe the first aeon was the aeon of Isis. It predated a time in history when mankind was more goddess-oriented or feminine-oriented. We got everything from nature. Our understanding of reality was based off of everything comes from nature. We hadn't learned to farm yet. We hunted and gathered for everything. Woman was the source of life. From the female of every species came new life. That's where life came from. They didn't understand the correlation between sex and birth. That aspect of it, okay? It's basically prehistoric man, in a sense. That's age of Isis. Isis being the Egyptian goddess of earth and fertility. Makes sense. Once man discovered agriculture, astrology, he entered what's called the phase of Osiris, or the age of Osiris. The age of Osiris you can think of the age of the slain god, or the manifest god. This is the aeon where we got Mithra, who was born of a virgin, sacrificed, and was resurrected. We get, pretty much every solar deity of existence. Horus, being the son of Osiris, the father god, Isis, Mother Earth. He was born of the virgin Isis, of the father god Osiris. He was innocent. He was persecuted by the devil or archdevil Set, died, and was resurrected. Jesus, the most common solar mythos, Christos, was born of a virgin, of Maria, Mara, which means water, born of the waters, of his father God, was injected of the Holy Spirit, and was raised a man. He was betrayed, killed, and resurrected. It's the same thing. It's a consistent mythos throughout time. That aeon of Osiris encapsulates all of those mythos. So that 25,000, 2,000 year, 3,000 year, whatever you want to put it, period of time where man was obsessed with the dying God, who related God to the sun. The sun would rise during the day and fall, would go to sleep or die every day. During the year, in the winter, the sun would disappear for 3 days. He would die for 3 days. Come back in the spring, be at full strength in the summer. In autumn, when it would start getting colder, the sun would die. A slow death. And then in a certain astrological sign, Scorpio, he would be betrayed, stung with the kiss of death, like Judas when he kissed Christ. He was betrayed with a kiss, with a scorpion sting. And then he is killed for us. The sun dies for us. So that when we sacrifice to him during the dark days, when we mourn his death, he goes into the underworld. In the Egyptian religion, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, this is Osiris going into the underworld, being taken down by Kefra, or the dark sun, essentially, where he dies, but essentially he gets resurrected. It's this constant myth of the sun dying and being resurrected, of God being manifest, dying, and being resurrected, of mankind continually rising up, being destroyed, rising up, being destroyed. The age of Osiris was the age of that way of thinking. Death, life, sacrifice, rebirth, resurrection, life everlasting. Man was so afraid of death. Okay? You have to also remember, the age of Osiris corresponds to the age of Pisces. Pisces is the fish. It's also a sign of death. Okay? Man was so afraid of death, he would do anything to live forever. So through his very actions, his religion, and his word, he tried to invoke eternity, everlastingness, eternal life. So thus, for the last 2,000 years, 1,500 if you want to put it that way, because technically it took 500 years for the Christian religion to actually establish as a religion. mankind's been obsessed with obtaining eternal life. The individual ego, the individual soul living on forever, not realizing that it's eternally being reborn. In our first phase of history under ISIS, we were completely confused to the aspects of death and life. They were a mystery. God held life and death in his hands. Man was just a subject, enjoying the garden. In the age of Osiris, there was an evil and a good. There was death and life. There was a polarity. There was a separateness. They were understood more tangibly as a part of life. And they were essentially obsessed with overcoming those things. In this aeon, we've been awakened to the fact that the sun does not die every year. In fact, the sun doesn't even revolve around us. We revolve around it. The sun never goes out. It is always there. The moon never goes away when it goes dark. It is always there. The earth never changes. It is always there. Mankind needs to understand that we have always been here. We will always be here. There is no eternal life. There is no eternal death. There is just rebirth, cycle. Everything is life. Life continues. There is no death. It is just continuous growth of a child. In the age of Horus, in this aeon of Horus, we are called to unveil all the mysteries of the old aeons. What we've learned from being in the bosom of our mother nature, from her allowing us to evolve and survive on this planet, from what we've learned in the age of Osiris of taking our destinies from our own hands, building empires, building nations, okay? Subjugating the land for ourselves, conquering peoples in the last 3,000 years, 2,500 years. What we've learned from that. And now we're in a new aeon where we take those two things, knowing that we are a part of creation, but also we are creators. Melding that into a singular thing, taking two polar opposites, making a third condition, a rectified condition, that brings it all together, man. We've had the aeon of the mother, we've had the aeon of the father, we are the children of the new aeon now. We are the children of God, we are the children of the aeon. What we do now is the history 2,000 years from now. The fact that this is now knowledge. I can go to a bookstore and buy a book that contains so much information pertaining to just everything. How to be a human, how to be spiritual, how to be inspired, mathematical, how everything. Not just this book, but this book with the tarot. When you start getting into the tarot and you start realizing what the cards represent, what they mean, how everything in life is connected. We're coming into an aeon where we learn that everything is connected, everything is united, that life is persistent. And we will evolve our consciousness and our trajectories towards that. So this is what we're doing. We're taking the wiggly-wackly weirdo stuff and we're extrapolating the truth. If this is like hidden knowledge that somehow has importance to humanity, I want to know what's important. Because I'm tired of war, I'm tired of pestilence, I'm tired of famine, I'm tired of hate, I'm tired of suffering, I'm tired of tyranny, I'm tired of everything that keeps people from evolving to what we should be. I'm tired of it. And I'm ready for practical solutions. I'm tired of cults, I'm tired of structures, of religious structures, I'm tired of political structures, I'm tired of everything. I'm ready for truth. And I think a lot of people are ready for truth. And as wackadoo as it sounds, to like get into this stuff, to me, it's like the only place that I feel I can find sanity now. In this new dawning era, when essentially we might just plug ourselves into a computer and become sentient, self-serving being. You know what I mean? Like the possibilities. Aleister Crowley saw this. He saw a generation where information couldn't be controlled. There was no internet back then, but he saw it coming. He knew it was that the individual was going to be given the power of the universe in their hands. In a sense, he didn't know how, but in a sense, he knew that it was coming. You mean you had the printing press, the radio, the automobile. He saw something coming. we're in that transition now. Parting of being a magician. So, in the tarot, you have some cards that represent magic. You have the magician card, or it's called the magus card. This card represents a person or a man who's acquired so much knowledge, occult knowledge, that he can produce and create anything. He is a free individual to create as he wills. He is will. He is the logos, the word, the will of God. The magus, in its truest sense, is a person who has no preconceived notions of anything. He is able to extrapolate any information and use it in any way that brings about a willed result or a willed goal. We are entering an era when we can create things through will, 3D printers, digitally, where we can experience things beyond our human conceptions, DMT, ayahuasca, you know what I'm saying? Freedoms that have never been offered mankind ever before are being forced down our throats. Something's about to change, something big. The magus tells us that as long as you're aware of these things, you're in the position of affecting that change, of pushing humanity in a certain direction, or at least your own life, and the life of the people that you love, in a direction that hopefully reveals them to their inner magus, their inner truth, their inner will, their true purpose of being alive. So how we do that is we start off first by unveiling our perceptions, the things we take for granted. So our sight. We produce weird things visually to tell ourselves that maybe what's here. So tell me this. You mentioned you might have had some experience with psychedelics. So why don't you share with me your experience with the psychedelics?
When we did the breathing technique, I was immediately like, yeah, I want to try that under the influence. It was about a year ago. I did it twice. My buddy was acquired some, I'll say, and not just like off of the poop patty.
So the mushrooms?
Yeah, no, they were hydroponically grown. The species was penis envy. I don't know the actual scientific name, but it's a true species of shrooms. And through whatever avenue, my buddy y'all would get along. He's into like the spiritual side of it, and was saying, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it in a kind of controlled environment. We're not gonna just take them and go to the bar or anything like that, because that's what a lot of people do, and it's a shame because they aren't getting the full benefit of the psychedelic. The discussion around how much came up, how much we were supposed to ingest, and what that could do in terms of not allowing us to actually use our bodies like we kind of normally use them. So we wanted to do a dry run with like 2 grams just to kind of see what it was about. And at that point, we actually kayaked out to a little island off the Tampa Bay coast, and just just a secluded place, so we know people aren't going to pass, because it's I know what to expect. So I was just like, okay, yeah, no people, that'd be cool. No interaction. The first round of doing 2 grams of shrooms, the first feeling that I felt was it's like the first time you kind of smoked marijuana, like the giggly kind of feeling, but you also had an uplifting kind of sense, and it was all tangible. It was all things that you could recognize, and it was very still, just there in front of my face. Nothing nothing changed at all in terms of visual perception or anything like that. And this was like, I guess I went into the experience thinking I was going to see things and so that kind of opened up my eyes to like what it actually was, and I respected the meditative side of it a little more after that. Because I felt the laughs, I felt the giggles, I felt the little numbing sensation, but I didn't like experience what I had read on all the forums talking about ego loss and all the good stuff, and that's what really we were aiming for. And so we wrapped up shop that day, saw some great wildlife in the same day, but wrapped it up and said, okay, we'll come back to the drawing board, do a little bit more, and do it in an enclosed environment. And that's what we did. I think it was 5 gram or 0.5 shy of what the psychedelic god or whatever the heralds that called it the hero dose, 5 grams. And we're, of course, when we're about to start taking this stuff, because we don't know what we're going to be like. We hear rumors and stuff, but we ingest the drug, and it was nasty. It was nasty, but we were ingested it and then drank orange juice, I guess, because something about that helps it. And started feeling the similar numbing and like kind of laughy feeling from the prior day, and we all got into my buddy's room and turned off the lights and just opened up the window because he lived out on the water, so we saw airplane traffic,
Oh, wow.
boats going by, so that was a good kind of visual experience. But that dark room also let us kind of close our eyes and really just kind of figure out what was going on the inside, and kind of without going too far into like because there's some stuff that you just cannot explain that happens, and it's said that you only bring back like a small percentage of what actually kind of took place, and you'll hear people taking notes and stuff and trying to but I just completely shut my eyes and tried to understand my body a little bit at that point, and some kind of little things here and there that happened. I recall having to go to the bathroom. Number one, urinate really, really bad. And then I started feeling, how do I say, like a detachment from that feeling and being able to break down and understand why I was feeling that. And that's the kind of thing that kind of throws me off, is because you have an understanding of what you can perceive. And I was thinking that I could perceive and understand things like pain, like back pain. I was like, why do I have lower back pain? And then being able to like break down vertebrae by vertebrae and understand like why. And other experiences in the visual kind of realm, meaning I'm opening my eyes at this point. All the things you would hear about, like a grid system, no dinosaurs or elephants jumping out of the wall, but like things like a plane going over the sky. You may see some degree of a grid system or something like that, or trails or tracers or light kind of light play, as you would call it. But overall, the visual didn't do nearly for me as the kind of meditative eyes closed sort of thing. The introspection. The whole time I was trying to reach a point of ego loss of just, but I never achieved that. The whole time I was trying to like position myself where I was sitting upright, and I could have like energy flow and this and that, and just little things I'd heard, but I didn't have any infrastructure of knowledge around meditation at the time.
Yeah.
And so my respect for it was kind of just like, yeah, maybe I'll try to use some breathing techniques. But the more and more I kind of grew in the 6-month span that it's been, going back to doing it, I think I'd be more geared to achieve those things like ego loss and some of the stuff you read about that you really want to kind of delve into. Overall, it was an eye-opening experience without any. I don't feel like I haven't had any urges to do it again. Like it's something that that'd be cool. Maybe do that again. But I'm not like, oh, I need my shrooms. Nothing like that. So something I would definitely say to maybe delve into, being one of the lighter weights in terms of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the entries. So yeah, I mean, profound, eye-opening. Yeah, bro, I tripped out. Everything felt weird. I mean, I could tell you like things that like I felt in terms of like physiological, like things like kind of undulated the walls, specific sensations such as like urinating. I happened to get up and go urinate because I was like, wonder what this is going to be like. And I stand up, I'm like, yeah, that's strange. And like just the whole feeling and perceiving your physiological processes from like a different state of mind in that point was kind of weird. I recall hearing a story about a girl just delving into the concept of actually taking a poop, just like the whole procedure, just like tripping out over that while tripping, of course.
Yeah.
But Either way, that's the only time I've done it, and it was something to look
So-
back on.
So it awakened you to like a subtler level of like what was just normally always going on. There.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty. I think that's essentially what I would hope people would try to get out of psychedelics. Is, I mean, I understand in a sense the aspect of tripping out, getting high, having a good time. That's perfectly fine.
Recreational.
Yeah, recreational, I suppose. But when you have something that can reveal very deep things, and the weird thing is, like, here's the cool thing. To a normal person, you can tell people, like, yeah, when I tripped out, I experienced such and such. It's like a really impactful experience to us. Like, a lot of people will say, like, I encountered doing, like, DMT. I encountered, like, loved ones. You know, like, my ancestors came to me or something like that. And it's really impactful to them. And a lot of times they'll tell you weird stuff like this. They'll be like, oh, my ancestors, my grandpa came to me and he told me, it's okay, man. I want you to have that watch. It's alright, your sister took it. But it's all going to be okay, man. And it's like, to that person,
It's huge.
they had so much wrapped up in the fact that, like, they loved their grandpa's watch, but when he died, somehow their sister got it. And they held that grudge. They held him back. And they tell you, and you're like, so you're a little bit of a cunt. You didn't want to let your sister have the watch, and your but it doesn't matter what we experience or the influence. It's the fact that we're experiencing something beyond our normal automatic perception.
That's it. I remember reading into because afterwards I was just like, what the hell just happened? Like,
Yeah.
well, what scientifically? Let me grasp this, because that's where I come from. It's school of thought, like around like trying to build scientific method around shit that I've experienced. And a study at Johns Hopkins stated that doing shrooms during that kind of peak, there's a actual remapping of physiological and brain kind of processes from different sides of the brain. So that's why you're seeing sounds and hearing colors and shit like that. I can fully get behind that now.
Well, molecularly, psilocybin mimics kind of our like the molecules that make up our neural pathways. It mimics that very, like, it's almost identical. The fact that it almost makes people believe, if you're into evolutionary psychology, it makes you believe that perhaps we've evolved with the mushroom. That the mushroom has been such a part of us that's why we mimic those things, or for the fact that we have cannabinoid receptors in our bodies.
Mm.
Why would we evolve to have cannabinoid receptors if we weren't intended to have cannabis? Cannabis.
DEA, can you answer this?
Yeah. So it goes to show you that there's truths beyond our automatic perceived reality that reveal deeper levels of knowledge, more subtle levels of knowledge and control in our lives. So we get to a certain part, and when I do my podcasts normally, where I like to end it with a tarot card reading.
First thing I pointed out when I got
Yeah,
it, but
first
I'm like,
thing.
what are these?
So, tarot is a lot of things to a lot of people. The most common thing that people generally, like, Vince, what's your perception of tarot?
Just the Hollywood perception. Just a
Fortune
lady
reading?
with like loosely fitting clothing like this. You walk through like the beaded curtain kind of thing, and she like maybe lies to you, maybe tells you something that affects you for that day or something like that. But don't even. That's terrible. No.
No, that's perfectly fine. So, like the fortune teller.
Yeah, the
Someone who's
fortune
going to
teller.
give you, like,
divination,
what's
like
gonna
future
divinate.
seeking.
Yes. All right. So, tarot can be that. If you want to view it that way. What's important about the tarot is it's basically a pictorial representation of the universe. So what the cards try and represent are universal phenomena of the universe. So, like, for instance, the 0 card is the Fool. The Fool, being 0, means he has no mind. He's a madman. He's completely empty-headed.
Okay.
That's supposed to represent, on the surface level, so The fortune teller would say that and say, "You've been a fool lately, haven't you? You've been fairly absent-minded. Do you feel like you haven't been very clear?" And then you go, "Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm confused. I need to know." Then she'll draw another card, and it'll be the devil card. So you innately will think, "That's bad." So the devil card, in its pictorial representation, represents, like you'll think, the devil represents control, evil, vileness, mystery, darkness. It really means, well, if you want to view it, illumination, liberation, humanity, will, peace. It represents all these other things. It's the meanings are based upon the person. So if you want to view it that way, the fortune is never quite the person's fortune you're reading. It's the person doing. And what the woman sitting there giving your fortune is revealing, not what she believes the card is telling about you, but what she believes about you that she's reading through a card. She's a scam artist. Essentially, she's reading you, your clothes, what you're wearing, the way you talk, the way you walk.
Which is impressive to a degree, but
Yes.
don't label it with, like, I'm a fortune type of thing.
Exactly. So, what tarot is, though, if you view it as a pictorial representation of the universe. So this card says luxury. So this card would encapsulate all the phenomena of luxury. And somehow this picture, when understood mystically as a symbol, reveals to you the powers of luxury. This card, the Princess of Wands, when viewed, reveals to you an aspect of fire, of a wand, magical will and power. But if I was to do this in fortune telling, this would represent a personality, a person type. Okay? It means different things to different people. What's important is that you have symbols. You correlate mental symbols. So it's basically extrapolating things from your brain, putting them into a card. So that upon viewing the card, your subconscious reads a message. You understand what I'm saying?
I would go into a fortune telling place with, like, what I wouldn't ever wear.
And see how
Yeah, just see how. But I mean, I already figured that it was bogus and that there was an actual. Let me say that I had seen, like, a different side of it. Like, that doesn't seem like what the fortune telling people are doing with those cards. Like, I had seen, like, a difference, but now you just made sense of it.
So here's the cool thing, though. If I was, okay, so there's 72 cards. Okay, you have 54 minor arcana, 22 major arcana. Okay, minor arcana are your numbered cards. So they encompass wands, cups, pentacles, or discs, and swords, daggers, or knives. These correlate to the four suits in a playing card deck. Spades, diamonds, okay? It's the same thing, okay? The 22 major arcana represent phenomenal forces, or personalities, or gods, or ancient beings, or whatever you want to put it. Like the Magus card represents, like I said, it represents someone that would view. That's my interpretation of it. Now, what I could do is take these 72 representations and take my known world. So my actual physical reality. So that card victory, okay? I can denote that card to physically represent or symbolically represent actual victory. So military victory, victory over a triumph, or victory over a struggle, or anything like that. So that if I were to say to give you advice, and I wanted to give you advice from the heart, from my subconscious, from my true experience, who I am at the core, not who I'm perceiving I am now, but that subconscious core of who I am, I could relate all of these phenomena of my known universe to these cards, use my subconscious impulse of a card to give you a message. And I could say, oh, this is the Aeon card. Well, this is a dawning of a new day for you. When you wake up tomorrow, you're going to feel like a new man. The world is going to open up. Possibilities are endless. You're going to be injected with a fire and the force in your body. It's going to be like heat, like fire in you. You're going to almost feel like a constant swelling up in you. You're going to have life and vitality. That's what you're going to have. And based on your subconscious response, that might actually speak to you. You could be wanting something to light a fire under you. You could feel lost or unmotivated. But by me speaking that over you with a picture, a symbol, me speaking over you with a symbol, your subconscious wells up and you get a feeling of inspiration, of vitality, that fire that's sparked inside of you. So tomorrow you wake up, you remember that card, you remember what happened, you're optimistic. You go out, you apply for that new job, you pursue that new thing, you do something with your life. Does that discredit the act that I did? I made change. I physically did something. Like I inspired you to action through a card. What that is, so that whole procedure of symbol, message, idea, perception is magic. So that person wakes up that next day. They remember that. There's an effect. A result occurs from the mystical act of reading a card and getting cosmic knowledge and relating that to the person who needs it, who's coming to a guru for spiritual aid. And the guru gives them it. The next day, they do the steps. They sacrifice a chicken. They whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it enables the person to do something they perceived they couldn't do before. You opened up a realm, a portal, a new reality. You created a paradigm shift. You did magic. You did something. Does it discredit what I did? If I can produce the effect with a card just as well as me like going to your house, waking you up, and does it discredit what I've done? No. It makes it even more impactful. Because I created something with the simple act of a couple words and a symbol, with a talisman, a magical symbol, and an incantation, a spell. I spoke over you. You were infected with that charm, that spell. And it allowed you to do something. It allowed a phenomenon which could not have occurred perceptually before to happen. So that's what we're going to do with these cards.
Okay, I'm about to feel so.
I normally don't do tarot readings for people, because like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not a fortune teller. I don't believe in fortune telling. But I do believe that if you truly want to help someone, and if you truly want to share something with someone, and you want to do it creatively, I believe there's parts of us, subconsciously, that will allow us to do that. Like I said, as human beings, we are capable of things that go beyond our realm of understanding, or our realm to rationalize, okay? So we practice these like very non-rational things to train our minds to not be so confined.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens.
I like that. I like how you were doing.
So as I'm shuffling this card, I want you to just be open, passive. Well up the question. Think of yourself like a pool of water. There's a question, the perfect question you want to ask the universe is right in that bottom of that pool. Slowly, like a little ball of light, it raises out from that water. Don't try and give a name or a symbol to that intention or that question. Just know it's there. It's a ball of light. Just hold on to it. Just know that whatever that thing is, that ball of light, it's the perfect thing you need to know. You want to know. The subconscious, it's that question the subconscious wants to know. That's what it is. Just hold on to it. So that light, I want you to imagine that light now in these cards. In the middle, right in there. I'm going to open it up. There's a light in there. That light that welled up from inside you is in these cards now. Your light's freaking me out, man. It's making the cards look crazy. There's our first card. We'll do 2 more cards.
That's 3.
3 cards. No, you don't have to think. Don't think.
I know. I'm not thinking based on that. I'm just getting back to my initial point.
There you go. Now remember I told you couldn't touch my cards? You touch that top card. Take that top card. There you go. Right. All right. So, the 3 cards we got. First one is the 4 of Discs, Power. Second, 10 of Discs, Wealth. Last card, 5 of Cups, disappointment. So there's magic in these cards right off the beginning. When you look at these pictures, you read the words, subconsciously you have ideas. Okay, conclusions. Specifically that one. That one doesn't seem very good.
It has a negative kind of.
Yeah, it does. This one's kind of cool. Wealth. Who doesn't like money? Who doesn't like money, right? Power. Who doesn't want power? Right? It's a surface level. Now, what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to tell you what I think these mean. Okay? The 4 of discs is the sun in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn, in astrology, is the powerful sign of the sun. When the sun is in Capricorn, he's full strength, full heat. Okay? The hot day of summer. Just think of it that way. Hottest day of summer. Okay? Capricorn is a ram, like a goat. Okay? Capricorn is also, in a sense, the goat of Mendes. He's the devil. Capricorn is that sign so the devil card in the tarot, it's the Capricorn card. Okay. So we have the sun. Remember I was telling you about how the sun represents that solar being, the solar god? All life comes from the sun. This card, being power, represents that primal force, that Capricornal force, in the sun. So it's the devil in his full strength. He is power, he is strength. What is the devil? The devil is the animal side, the carnal side, the dark side, the unknown side of man. He is the tempter. Okay? He is temptation. He is will. That part of man is the part of man that we hide from other people. It's the part that gives us internal power. It's the part as a man that gives us force and virility. As a human being, it's what tells us to conquer, to control, to manifest. It's what gives us the drive to create, to reproduce, and to be reborn anew. It is the force and heat of the sun in its full power. It is the glory of mankind. The will of man is the most powerful thing that we control. The fact that we can manifest anything we desire based on our ability, based on our power. If we have enough power, enough devotion, we can build it. In the middle of that card, you have 4 towers with a central gate. It's got 4 walls. Each one of those towers has a triangle on it. Those triangles are the elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Man and his universe is composed of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Air is his mind, his ability to think, to comprehend, clarity. Fire is his will, his energy, his force. Water, like a mirror, is his reception, his memory, his desire. Earth is his physical body. It's what makes him whole. It's what makes him material. It is what he is. It is his value. Power, when we understand what we are truly, when we connect with the core aspect of ourselves, physically, what we are as a human being, not from our social perceptions, not from our societal perceptions, from the perception of what we feel like on an animalistic, what it is to be man. When your heart beats, what that feels like, what it means, and what you are because of it, is power. When you tap to that, you build an impenetrable fortress no one else can fuck with you. That's what true power is. It's self-knowledge. The weak man is the man who is unwilling to search out the things that are unknown, who is being afraid of the things about himself and his environment that he finds frightening. Only those who are willing to traverse those mysteries, the mysteries of Capricorn, will shine in the sun and have true power. That's the first card. Second card is wealth. It's the 10 of discs. In the tarot, the 10 of discs is traditionally the conclusion of all things. So remember I told you there was 54 cards of the minor arcana, 22 cards in the major. The minor arcana are like playing cards. They're numbers and symbols. In that card, every single one of those minor cards, so the 4 of discs, the 5 of cups, the 10 of wands, the 2 of discs, the 2 of cups, whatever those cards are, they're all in there. All that card. Each one of those cards is like a disc. They represent, ultimately, something physical. Power, in its abstract sense, in this card, does equate to something in this world. In this aeon, it's money, it's wealth. Power is value. What you value is power. Wealth has to do with personal value. What do you hold value of in your life the most? When you accumulate all of your life, so your works, everything that you have and hold, everything you believe, the totality of your entire existence, your tin of discs, your wealth, what you believe, those things hold. So your personal value. Remember, if this is everything in the universe, these cards correspond to everything inside of you. This would represent you as a whole. What value do you put on yourself as a whole? And does that value give you power? What these two cards together are telling you is personal value of the whole. So your whole existence as a person is what is ultimately going to link to who you are on the primal level, is ultimately going to be a source of power. It's basically telling you what you are now is all you need to do what you want to do. All the wealth and all the power is yours. Cups, disappointment. Mars in Virgo. Cups is the watery suit. It's the suit of self-reflection. The way I like to describe a cup when it pertains to, like, say, the psychology of a person, it's like our emotions. Will, fire, is like your actions. It's what you do. It's what you expend your energy. It's how you send out energy. Cups is how you retain that energy. It's how you remember what you did. It's your perceptions of things. You're like a big mirror. What I do to you reflects to me, but then it has a reflection onto you. You perceive it a certain way. This is like our perceptions. What it's telling us here is disappointment. It's revealing to us a mode of disappointment. The card is ruled by Mars, which is the planet of war. Mars, being a war planet, being a hot planet, being energetic, okay? Power is associated with force. To display power, you must display force. To enact power, you must enact force. Control. Okay? You must war against something. The fact that you have protection shows that there's an adversary. Mars is known as the great adversary. When we shelter ourselves from the adversarial aspects of our lives, so the things that challenge our power, challenge our self-worth, when we hide ourselves from these things, our cup cannot be filled. We're left empty. And we wonder why our life, in certain aspects, seems empty. Why there is no rain to fill the cup. There's no water. There's no mode of perceiving our actions correctly. There's no moisture. There's just heat and dry earth. There's no perception. So thus we are disappointed. Whereas we shield ourselves from the force thinking that we're protecting our Virgo natures, our innocence, our beauty. Virgo is our desires. It's the illusionary beauty that we sometimes find in things. It's that lover that we could never obtain, that goal that always eluded us, that love that got away. We think we're protecting our emotions, our fragile emotions, from being hurt. We think that we're going to hurt that Venus, that woman of our life, that feminine aspect. We think we're protecting her from our force and fire, from the true heat of who we are, from our true power. But all we're doing is we're leaving our cups unfilled. We're giving light to disappointment in our lives. So ultimately, we should not have fear because we are all powerful. We should not be afraid because we are all valuable. We shouldn't hide ourselves from the force of what's inside of us. Because there, we won't be disappointed. We'll have victory. So, that's one aspect of viewing the cards. Another aspect is you can look at the numbers. Numbers is a cool thing. 4, 10, and 5. Okay. 4 represents all things 4. Quad. Earth, air, fire, water, like we have here. It represents structures. Buildings are built in 4s. It represents things that are sustainable in themselves, just through their balance. A balance of 4 allows you to build a building, a complex, a tower. We move to the 10. The 10 is the number of completion, whereas the 4 is the number of building. Okay, so I'm going to build something. I'm going to build it in 4. Okay, I'm going to need a foundation. The foundation is going to have 4 corners. The walls is going to have 4 walls. The roof is going to have 4 pitches. When I decide to fill it with everything, I fill it with the 10, the completion, the all. Me being the person wishes to be safe within the 4 confines of my 4. 5 is a number of imbalance. It is like the 4, but with 1. The 1 is separate, though. It is an upside-down pentagram. The 4 walls have given way. You have an intruder at the gate. When you superimpose this card upon this card, you have 4 empty cups, with the central passage being revealed from the central cup. Light does not enter. You have a choked source. Here you have the water blocking these from receiving the solar influence. Here you have Mars being blocked by the lotuses, a symbol of water. Energy cannot pass. It's showing you the dichotomy of structured power versus trying to control that power, the outcome, the result, the reflection. If you're too worried about hurting your own feelings or someone else's feelings, your power will always be invaded. You always have an outlet. You won't get full. So that's what we could view from the numbers themselves. You can also view it, say, I don't know, a lot of different things. So, given all of that, I know I just injected a lot of information into your head concerning those cards individually. So I want to try something new. So I'm going to give you a card. You're going to tell me what it means to you.
Just based off of the symbolism,
What you feel. So think of it this way.
what I feel.
First off, we're going to see what the information you get from looking at it. What are the ideas that come to your mind? Then, once those ideas have been planted, what is the feeling you get from it?
Okay. And then you're going to blow my mind with what it actually is?
No, but I want to know how you interpret something fresh and new.
I guess on plate is interference. Symbol is 2 swords going in one direction, with a bunch of swords kind of intersecting in a perpendicular fashion, so clearly symbolizing interference. I feel like it plays into the other ones a little bit. I feel like this could have, if there were 4 cards to be played, this could have been the one.
That's the 4th element.
Yeah.
We had fire, we had, earth. We had 2 earth cards and a water card. But 1 earth card was under the domain of fire, the sun and Capricorn. Okay? The second card was an earthy card, okay, being the 10 of Wands. 10 being conclusion, the earth. The last card, the 5 of Cups, cups being of water but still of fire in nature. Here, we have an airy card of swords, okay, but of a Jupiter. Well, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but essentially we have swords, represents the element of air. So that would have been, in a sense, it could have concluded our 4 elements, in a sense, if we did a 4th card.
So, like, and when I'm looking at this, you want me to just rattle off, like, what it makes me feel? Just constraints, boundaries. Can't really pin down anything in particular, but... I mean, it seems just, again, negative connotation kind of assigned to it. The colors kind of scream at you, like, definitely not like through joy. It's not like, it's like not a good interference, not something that's aiding you. Something that's in the way that, I mean, just the way that they're shaped, all the different swords intersecting, different variants of them. kind of play into what I would perceive as just like different types of interferences. So not just one. You got like a sword that's going like into it with a curve, ones that have different shapes. So yeah, definitely something there.
What's the number of the card?
And that's 8. And so we had the 4, the 5, and the 4, the 10, and then the 5, and then I drew the 8. So 8.
So you have double the 4, the 5 is doubled in 10. So you have 2 sets of double correlatives. You have 5, a 10, an 8, and a 4.
Yeah.
4 times 2 is 8.
Mm-hmm.
5 times 2 is 10. You have 2 cards that correlate to each other numerically. At least in that sense.
So that's when you handed me this, there is a correlation to the.
If you want to believe so. See, so here, this is what I'm going to explain. So you gave off a few examples of what you just innately perceived. So what you did is you took your set of correspondence. So your life experiences, your beliefs, your ideas, the way you think, just the information that you have in your head. You are given a symbolic impression. So this card itself isn't really a thing. It's a picture that someone drew. It doesn't have any power in a sense. It doesn't mean anything really. It's just a card. But we've done what humans are really good at. We've given meaning. So when you're looking at this card, you're looking at this information, but you're really delving into information within yourself. You have no field of reference for a lot of these symbols. So what you're interpreting is, one, just the information that's given subject to the card, but then also what your own feelings and intents come up. You're bubbling up information. Your brain is trying, remember I told you your brain has to fill in the gaps. Your brain needs a perceivable reality. So what you're doing when you look at this card, your brain is creating a perceivable reality, a way for you to understand, like, this card you've never seen before, you've hardly ever seen tarot cards, and all of a sudden you have this 8 of something, and you're like, well, what does it mean? Your brain will then tell you, well, this is what it means. Interference? Well, this is what interference means to you. These swords have this kind of connotation to you. They have this kind of negative connotation, this jaggedness, It reveals things about yourself. The tarot is like meditation. You're looking at a card and you think, wow, what's that card mean? Really what you're doing is you're just reflecting. It's like a reflective pull. You're reflecting information onto it, and then you're drawing information back. And you're drawing these conclusions. It's like a nice enlightenment process. Mm-hmm. Now, remember when I told you you could give correspondences to these cards that have universal application? So these cards do have universal meaning. So there's the personal meaning you get from looking at it. So a symbol. So think of it this way. The swastika. That's just a symbol. But it has different meanings to different people. Mm. It has really different meanings. To a Buddhist or a Hindu, it could mean luck, or the wheel of the sun, the cycle of the sun, the force of the sun. It could be the Fleifel card, or the solar sun. The Nazis, knowing this, inverted it to represent tyranny, power. Okay? They were harnessing the power of the sun, putting it into action, and creating their own reality. Mm-hmm. A funny note, during World War II, when people did this, the thumbs up, the story is Aleister Crowley revealed to Winston Churchill the sign of victory is the sign of Typhon in magic. So in the Egyptian story, when the Nazis took the solar sun, the fourfold sun, that's a symbol for Osiris. The cross is the symbol of Osiris. So they basically showed that they were continually sacrificing Osiris, or harnessing the power of Osiris to bring about their new dawn. Aleister Crowley, seeing this symbolism, said, ooh, in the Egyptian story, Set, who's Osiris' brother, Set kills Osiris. He's Scorpio, he's the one that kills the sun for 3 days. So when basically the Allies were like, how do we defeat them propagandally or cultally? How do we defeat them this way? And he says, well, they take on the sign of Osiris. You take on, the sign of Osiris, you take on the persona of Set, the one that kills Osiris. Set is this, the victory, the sign of victory. Victory over Osiris. This, the V for victory. Oh, wow. So what he was saying is, if you could get enough people doing this sign, it would magically counter the swastika of the Nazis, thus magically creating a symbol that meant something. So this meant victory. So in and placed the symbol of victory into people this way, so it would invoke, whoever saw that would invoke victory over the Nazis.
That's ridiculous.
So it would correlate that magical symbol into
That's, yeah, that makes sense.
But that's how these cards work. It's symbol. Your brain is going to imply a meaning to a symbol. Your brain cannot hold a symbol without a meaning. Okay. So it's going to impose a symbol, whether you want it or not. Your brain does this for everything in life. You encounter things every day you don't understand. You think you understand them because your brain implants that meaning, that understanding. When you meditate, do these drugs, do these consciousness-altering things, it reveals to you that when the information that's being fed to you isn't dictating your reality, reality is something far different than what you're experiencing on a moment-to-moment basis. These cards help you reveal that. They slowly reveal how the brain implements symbol and meaning, and how you can consciously connect with the subconscious, the one that sees the meaning in a symbol, and then your brain automatically sees a stop sign and goes, stop!
I fell into the trap of what you're talking about. Just immediately,
yeah.
Sign
Had you not have any preconceived notions, had you been like the true fool zero card, have no preconceived notions, but that fool who has no notions is the same as the magus, who has nothing preconceived. He knows everything. He knows that there are what a symbol is, but he does not. He has power over the symbol. The fool has no symbol. The magus has every symbol, but he is the maker of it. So we learn. We start out as the fool. We are subject to our reality. We enter a world of chaos in which we are subject to this information. But we slowly unveil the layers of reality, and we inject our own meanings. So I'm going to tell you what the universal meanings of this card are. 8 is the symbol in Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the mystical teaching of the Hebrews. There's this thing called the Tree of Life. It's got 10 spheres on it. 8 is the sphere of Hod, which is astrologically the planet Mercury. The planet Mercury is of quicksilver. So in alchemy, it is the element of quicksilver. Mercury, so get it? It's a metal that moves. It's liquid. Okay. Mercury is also an airy symbol. It's a planet of like air in a sense. It's kind of like water in the fact that it's mutable. But Mercury, the god Mercury, he's the messenger of God. Okay? He flies. He has the winged boots. He's an airy god. He flies, travels, goes places. He speaks. Okay. Mercury is also Hermes. Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is a scribe, a scholar, a learned man, an airy man, a mental man. He is also, in Egyptian mythology, Hermes Trismegistus is Thoth, the ibis-headed god, the god of wisdom, of writing, the god who created symbol, who created language, who created writing. Hermes Trismegistus is also known as the man who gave us science, medicine, art, and writing. Okay? Mercury, the god Mercury, is the god that gave us writing, art, medicine, speech, language. Okay? The magus in this card deck, his astrolot. I didn't plan that, dude.
I was about to.
The magus is Mercury. That's the symbol of Mercury. He is Mercury. He represents that 8 of the card. That 8 is that guy right there. He represents symbol, the giver of symbols, the understander of symbols, the creator of symbol, the creator of magic. But he has no preconceived notions for what he gives the notion. Interference is the swords. So swords represents the mind, mental, okay? The mind. It's air. That might be a little hard to understand, but essentially that's, in the scheme of things, that's what it represents. It's the mind. The mind is like a sword that you dissect things.
I see what you're saying.
8. So you have 8. Think of it like ideas. You have 8 ideas. In a true nature, Mercury, being the number 8, being of Mercury, there's no opposition. It's perfect balance. The 8 is an even number. It's perfectly balanced. So like, when you look at an octagram, it's a 4-sided star. Each side is perfectly balanced by another side because it's 2 squares superimposed on each other. Okay. It has balance. This card doesn't seem very balanced, though. What happened? we have Jupiter, which is the number 4. Jupiter in Kabbalah, just like Mercury's number 8, Jupiter, the father planet, is number 4. That power card we got, number 4, represents, in a sense, the number part represented Jupiter. Okay. So this card is Jupiter in Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, this guy here. Okay. What it is, Gemini is the astrological sign of like duality. It's 2 twin men facing 2 different directions. In a certain conception, it represents self-reflection, but mental reflection. Geminis are usually people that are introspective or extrospective. They see themselves in things. In a sense. That's my perception. But we know that you have Jupiter, which is half, the number 4 is half of 8. In fact, the symbol of Jupiter is a 4. So, Jupiter, being the 4, is half of 8. But you have interference here of the 2. These 2 swords represent that Gemini. So these are the 2 swords causing... So what is interfering here? Which one of these swords is causing interference? If these are ideas, so these 2 swords are fairly identical, aren't they? Mm-hmm. The magus gives meaning. So these 2 things in Gemini means they're the same. We've correlated 2 opposites to be the same thing. And they're facing the same direction. So this is, in a way, a twofold thought. All thought is dualistic, because everything is dualistic. There is or there is not. Male, female, positive, negative. There's always going to be 2 facets of any idea. Anything you can think of, there's 2. There's always going to be a Gemini in the instance, as far as thought is concerned. But we have 6 swords stopping it. 6 is the number of Tifereth on the Tree of Life. It's the number of the sun. Okay. Something of a solar nature, of a 6 nature, is impeding our Gemini nature. So what happens? So basically, you can also read it. So like these are all like things you can extrapolate. So this is all information, just off of the little symbols on the card.
It's a shit ton of information.
Yes.
Too.
It's a shit ton of
But
information.
now I'm pissed that I didn't see some of that too. Well, not the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking like
the 2 swords being the same.
2 swords being the same. The fact that there's 8 swords in total, the 8 on the top.
Do you see how conscious attention is now revealing things that you could not perceive earlier?
Yeah.
Occult wisdom is the ability to look deeply at something long enough to extract as much as you can. So there's this saying in Hermeticism called "as above, so below," as within, so without. Hermes Trismegistus, he had this book called the Emerald Tablets. Okay, and it's this book of like precepts, like all things are polar, all things are of a positive nature and a negative nature, cause and effect. It's ancient science. So like the first bit of science. Ancient little tablet made of emerald, may or may not be real. One of those mystical weird things. But essentially this guy, Hermes Trismegistus, who is Thoth, who is Mercury, created this thing, and this is where we get all this cool occult knowledge from. Okay. But he teaches us that Kether is in Malkuth. Malkuth means earth, or kingdom. Kether means crown, or God. God is in the kingdom, so God resides in his kingdom, just like his kingdom resides in God. God created everything, just like God is everything. This skull itself, if I were to delve deeply enough within this object, I will reveal everything of the universe. Because this object is created from everything that everything else of the universe is made out of. Okay. This deck of 72 cards essentially means that everything in the phenomenal universe can be explained by one of these cards. Or the entirety of this deck explains the entirety of the world. If I meditate long enough on these cards, I will understand the entirety of existence. In the same sense, if I truly understand the entirety of this object, I will truly understand the entirety of everything. So, when we do this stuff, we intently look at a card long enough, it starts revealing things to us. It comes alive. It has a force of its own. All of a sudden, these 8 swords now represent abstract concepts. They can represent, the 8 can represent an abstract being. This being the giver of idea, So interference could be, I'm trying to give an actual idea, a united idea, but I am being interfered by other ideas. I could have a Gemini, I could be like Mercury, creating a fresh thing, creating something anew, giving something a new symbol, but everyone else is interfering with that because they have their own symbol. It's interference in its true sense of I cannot make something happen because of an equal or greater amount of opposition against that thing. In this realm, it represents ideas. So you have a united idea, but you have a force, a bright force, a hot, bright force of 6 coming against you. The 2 cannot compete against the 6 until it rectifies and becomes the 8. All these swords must face one direction to pierce at something. Otherwise, you just have stagnation, interference.
Okay.
Or it could be you're a gambler and you're debating whether or not to bet on a certain team, and you draw this card and you say, my team's going to get that interference dough, we're going to get that money. It doesn't matter, dude. It's your reality, your universe, your world in these cards. So as like when I draw these cards, they're like pieces of me. Like these cards here, the major arcana. So they're the ones with titles like the Sun, the Magus, the Devil, the Aeon. These I view as pieces of my phenomenal universe. Okay, like gods, archetypes. Like this card, the Sun, I view this card as the physical sun, the spiritual sun, the rays that come from the sun, and the things that I view as being sunny. Joy, happiness, freedom, innocence. I correlate to that card. So when I draw it, those things come to my mind. This card is a minor arcana. I represent this as, one, an aspect of myself, so like peace, my capacity to create peace, my mental peace, my idea of peace, what that is to me. This is an abstract being, an abstract force or phenomenon. This is a psychological force that I'm wanting to understand. Now, there's other cards like the Princess. That's a person, a personality type. When I view that card, I view that as a specific type of person. This I view like Violet. She's fiery, she's uncontrollable, she's free in her very core. She does that to me. She makes me hot, she makes me excited, she ignites a fire in me. This card is like that person to me. She is my princess. I, being the prince of fire, being an Aries, a very fiery person. My astrological sign.
Mine too.
You're still Aries? Nice. Oh, I got a lot to share with you. I've dubbed.
Really, dude? Because
Yeah.
because I need some.
Well, actually, I don't want to tell you anything because I want to know what you draw out of it because I don't want to.
Well,
I don't want to
dude,
infect
have to
you.
be another. That could be another podcast.
Yeah,
I don't wanna
both
know.
Aries see the differences.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna just be like, yeah, you don't know shit.
No. But basically, what I'm trying to illustrate is, I know a lot about these cards, like correspondingly. Like I can rattle off what sphere on the tree of life, what path on the tree of life, what Hebrew letter it corresponds to, what astrological symbol, what number, what magical technique. I can relate all these dumb things that honestly don't mean anything to anybody, really, when you really think about it. But because I have decided to give those things meaning, I, being the Magus, controlling my reality, have a deck of cards that allow me to produce things in myself, subconsciously, through conscious manipulation of a card. So in that same sense, the fortune teller uses his own correspondence to consciously manipulate someone else. Because you're like me, we're both people. We have subconsciouses, we have perceptions, we have beliefs. If I can denote some of those beliefs from you, I can influence you with enough charisma, machismo. I can use the right words, use the right incantations, the right body language, the right symbol, the right asana, the right posture, the right God form. I can give you the right symbol. I can implant that symbol in your consciousness, or I can take it away. I can hide it. I can make it hidden. I can trick you. I can fool you. But either way, I can exact power without actually physically doing something. I could create magic with intelligence, with God, with picture. You do the same thing all the time. the same reason the fortune teller can fool the person into thinking that they should be with this person or not be with that person, they should start this career or invest in this thing, that exact same power that person enacts over that person has over themselves to produce those things themselves. You want a better life. You control the symbolism, the power to bring those things about within your own self, within your own conscious, within your own psyche. The trick is unraveling those things that you think about yourself that other people or that you've come to believe, getting to your core, and then building back up from that.
That's the deepest.
Without the tarot is
That just completely. I was not even in the shallow end. I was out of the pool. Like you just gave me a boat to kind of at least like see what's in the deep end of the whole thing, and I appreciate that. I had a completely skewed perception of that, but like I think it was by script by fortune tellers, and so
a lot of assholes out there, man.
they just make it
Make it really hard.
shame that,
Yep.
Damn.
So I guess that's we'll wrap up the podcast with that.
It's just eye opening.
Eye opening, yeah. So
You might be like sitting in my bed just.
you're not gonna be able to sleep, man.
No, I'll like text you at like 3 a.m. Like, hey man, I've been thinking about those tarot cards.
So I will leave you with something. So I believe that in this new aeon, information should be freely given. You shouldn't charge anyone to help you. Okay? I've given you a lot of information about a lot of different things. So I wouldn't leave you with something that I didn't think would help you. So as my podcast viewers may know, I have a man crush on a man named Lon Milo Duquette. Lon Milo Duquette is like me, may or not be involved in some occult societies, may or may not be completely batshit obsessed with this kind of stuff, like me. But he's a writer, and he's really good at making people, the stuff that we just went over, he's way better than me at making people understand it.
Just like
Yeah.
laying in.
So this book is called The Chicken Kabbalah of Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford,
That's a long title.
written by Lon Milo Duquette. As you can imagine, Lamed Ben Clifford is Lon Milo Duquette.
Okay.
So, just to demystify the book straight off. This is a book on Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the Hebrew mystical system. Specifically what you learn about this is magical Kabbalah. So like what I was talking about here, like this card represents this sphere, which is this god, blah, blah, blah. It's a series of correspondence using Hebrew mysticism. If you want to get really deep into it, it's like how Jesus did miracles. It's why Jesus was so cool, because he was the Kabbalist, man. He was a mystic, a rabbi. Okay. So that sort of thing. That, of course, may or may not be true. But this book essentially teaches you the basics of the Tree of Life, Kabbalah, Hebrew, astrology, numerology. It's basically all the stuff we went over. Here's the Hebrew letters as they correspond to the Tree of Life. It's all there, and very simple. This card represents a tarot card. Tarot trump the devil, letter Ayin, number that, and it explains it to you.
That's what I need, really.
Yeah, and he does it through the persona of this rabbi, and he's funny. And I want to give you that. I have multiple copies. You can have that one.
Appreciate that.
It's an easy read.
Chicken Kabbalah.
Chicken Kabbalah. And he's a Thelemite, so he does touch on a little bit of Thelema as well.
Magic of Thelema.
Yep.
I've heard that name.
So, moving on. I just want to thank everyone that has sat through this, what I'm guessing is like a 3-hour-long podcast. I, of course, want to thank Kyle for being subject to all of this craziness and weirdness.
Not craziness. I just feel like we're pushed into a little corner, and I'm optimistic about this. So.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say craziness. I feel like this isn't crazy. I feel like what we're seeing on the news and how we're living as a society is crazy. So this is not.
Exactly.
So
So we're revealing some truth, guys, one person at a time. So remember, guys, Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. 93. Okay. All right, man. 2 hours and 54.